Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the virtual Committee of the Whole meeting for Tuesday, January 12th. According to the provincial lockdown and the health protocols in place, it is in council chambers. It is just myself and the clerk. We are spaced accordingly. We also have one of our deputy clerks that is in charge of streaming this entire process, and our other deputy clerk is on the other end of the building, other end of the stage, taking the minutes. So we're all following health protocols here. Council is all tuned in virtually on live stream. So we will call the meeting to order. I have a couple of changes to the agenda. We want to remove item 4.5, which is a proposed deputation on the proposed surplus declaration enclosure sale of a portion of road allowance adjacent to 2 Omega Road. Regarding item 7.2 on the agenda, Mr. Alan Webster has withdrawn his deputation. His issues have been addressed by Realty Services and he has no further concerns and no need to do a deputation. I also want to move item 7.7, the master fire plan, to the end of the agenda, and we will deal with that report after item 8.6 under memos. So if I can get a motion, please, a mover and a seconder for the adoption of the agenda as amended. Councillor Vale and Elmsley, thank you. Any questions? All in favor? Thank you. Anyone opposed? Motion is passed. Thank you. Any disclosure of pecuniary interest on today's agenda that anyone wants to bring forward? Councillor Vale, go ahead.
I've got a conflict with item 8.1 on the agenda as I'm a member of the Woodville Lions Club.
Okay. If you just, you don't have to shut your video off or anything for a conflict, just don't participate in the conversation, and we've noted that. Thank you, Councillor Vale. Any other disclosures of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, we'll move right into item 4, which is deputations. Our first deputation, and I'll remind all the deputants, you have respectfully 5 minutes to do your deputation. Our first deputation is item 4.1, Sandra Robinson. If you can come on the line, Sandra, regarding the dock license application for 114 Front Street East in Bobcaygeon. And it is my understanding, Sandra, your husband Dave is joining us as well. So we can see you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
And we can hear you just fine, so please go ahead.
Good afternoon, Mayor Letham and councillors. My name is Sandra Robinson, and this is my husband, Dave, and we're here to discuss the dock on the shoreline of the Bobcaygeon River across the road from 114 Front Street. I inherited 114 Front Street East, Bobcaygeon, in December of 2017. My family moved to Bobcaygeon in 1972 when we purchased Riverside Lodge at the corner of Front Street and Ann Street in Bobcaygeon. My mom and dad, Gerald and Margaret Unger, purchased 114 Front Street East in 1975. There was an old cottage on the property and my dad had it torn down, and there were 3 duplexes built, which are now rental units. The dock and the stairs in question were there in 1975 when we purchased the property. We have maintained the wooden dock and the shoreline since we purchased the property. A new wooden top was placed on the dock around 1989 and again in 2020 as the dock was rotten and a danger to users. The dock is used by our tenants for fishing, swimming, or just for relaxing, watching the boats. It is also used by people in the neighborhood. There is a grandmother that uses the dock for fishing with her grandchildren. You have received 2 pictures of the dock. 2 of them are the new wooden top, and the other one is the wooden dock has been taken off for the winter. I was able to contact the grandson of the prior owners of the property. David Rottenberg's grandparents purchased the property in the late 20s. David remembers the dock being there since the 40s. The dock has been there a very long time, approximately 75 years. So we are hoping today that we can come to some sort of an agreement so we can continue to use the dock. Thank you for letting us do the deputation.
You're very welcome, and thank you for coming. I'll just stick on there for a minute. I'll see if council has any questions. I think the best course of action for us here, because we don't have any information on why there's an issue with the dock license, is I'll ask for a motion that we receive your deputation and the correspondence and refer it back to staff for a report back in Q1 of this year so that we can get all the information and then council can make an informed decision. So if I can get a mover and a seconder for that, then we'll see if there's any questions for you. Councillor Dunn and Seymour Fagan, thank you. Are there any questions for the deputants? Councillor Seymour Fagan, go ahead, please.
Yes, hi. So Sandra, I came and met with you on the property. That dock actually is a cement dock, and it's on the Trent Severn waterway. It doesn't really have access to any, it's not on city property. And I do know why land management requested the removal. It was because it was in a settlement area. Now, I didn't know that we do not allow dock licenses within a settlement area, especially one that has been there for years and years and years. So, yeah, I think what Mayor Letham said, sending it back to staff is the best idea. Now, the one question I do have with you is, when the city came out to see, was there any explanation as to why you had to remove the dock? And do you have insurance as well?
When we weren't there, when somebody from the city came out, we weren't, nobody requested that we meet them there. We did meet yourself, yes, just this past week, or last week, I guess. But we didn't, nobody requested that we meet them there at the property.
Okay, so this kind of came out of the blue. And do you carry insurance for that, the access for the dock and for the dock?
It's on, we're in the process of looking into it. I think it's going to be able to go right on our building policy. Okay,
thank you.
Yeah, so I think what we'll do, so the motion is to refer it back. We'll get a report back in Q1 by the end of March. That'll give us time for this season, and council will have all the information, and then we can make an informed decision and see if we can see what we can do at that time. So that's our motion. If there's any further questions, I'll call the question. All in favor? Thank you. Anyone opposed to that motion? That motion has passed. Thank you, Robinsons, for your time today and for sharing your concerns with us. We'll see what we can do when we get a report back, and you will be notified when that report comes back to council.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a great day. Okay, we'll move into our next deputation, which is item 4.2, which is a phone call. Michaela Holtzheimer, if you can *6 or whatever you need to do there to get on the line.
Hello.
This is regarding the water bill for a water bill concern for 53 Gee Crescent. Can you hear me, Michaela?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
We can hear you just fine. You have 5 minutes. Go ahead.
Okay, I live at 53 Gee Crescent. I've lived there for 4.5 years when I received this bill in September. The bill was for $1,200. My bills are normally no more than $250 for the last 4 years that I have been a resident of the city of Kawartha Lakes. I didn't think that was accurate, as I've never had a bill that much, and I didn't use it in water for that. I don't have a pool or anything. I've talked to basically everybody that works in the billing and the utilities and all that stuff. And we decided to replace my water meter, which was done, and send it out for testing. The testing came back that there was nothing wrong with it. I believe that something was wrong with it, as I got a new water meter on October the 1st of last year. And since that time, which is almost like 4 months, I've used less than 10 cubic meters of consumption, whereas the bill that we were discussing was over 200 cubic meters of consumption, which I don't know how. I don't have an answer. Nobody that I've spoken with the city does have an answer. It's just, I don't understand where all the water went, right? I had a plumber come in. I have no leaks. I paid $180 for a plumber to come in. There's no leaks. I am a single person in my home 95% of the time. My husband's a truck driver. He's gone 5 or 6 days a week. I work full time, so it's not like I'm at home running water constantly. What else do I have to say here? Sorry. The last bill that I just got was back down to a normal price, which was about $248, I think, which I just paid. So every bill up until the two previous has been in normal range, and the one that I just got has been in a normal range. I have not changed anything in between the last bill and the bill that I just got. And so basically what I want to do is have this bill somehow, like, maybe I can pay half of it, or I can pay for the testing, or if there's some sort of like price adjustment that can be made, because I don't have $1,000 to pay this bill when I've never had a bill like this before. I don't know. I always pay my bills. I pay my taxes. Like, I don't know where the $1,000 in water went. You don't know where the $1,000 went in water. And I don't know what to say other than, I can't really afford to pay for $1,000 in water that I can almost guarantee I didn't use. And I don't know what else to say. So that's my whole spiel.
Thanks, Michaela. I appreciate that. Probably what I'll recommend, we'll see if there's any questions, but again, we'll get some information back from our staff. So what I'll recommend is, again, we receive your deputation and refer it back to our staff for a report back in Q1. So probably get it back before then, but we'll say Q1, and then we'll have all the information, and council can have a discussion about, why did this happen and what are some of the different options. So I'll ask for a mover to receive and refer back to staff for a report back. Deputy Mayor O'Reilly and Councillor Yeo. Are there any questions for Michaela regarding the deputation? Councillor or Deputy Mayor O'Reilly, go ahead. You've put yourself on mute. Councillor O'Reilly, you're on mute. Yep, take it off.
How about, is there?
You're on mute, Deputy Mayor O'Reilly.
Mute, but it doesn't seem to want to, yeah.
Nope, you're still on mute. Can I suggest you just press the space bar and hold it down? You're good, go ahead.
Can you hear now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, sorry for that. I just have one question. Michaela and I, we've had several conversations as well as with staff, and we'll hear that when the report comes back. I just had one question, Michaela. When the first water meter was tested and came back, I know you replaced a new one and you're back to regular bill, but was the first water meter found faulty?
No, they said it was correct, but it came back with a report saying that there was nothing wrong with it. But my personal opinion is there's something wrong with it when in 4 months I've used less than 10 cubic meters when I get a new bill. So, anyways, the testing people say there's nothing wrong. I believe there is something wrong.
Okay, well that's fine. Anyway, so we'll see what comes back in the report. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? So we have a motion. I'll call the question. All in favor? Thank you. Anyone opposed? Okay, that motion's passed. So Michaela, what we'll do is we'll get a report back on our staff with all the information, the meter, and we'll see if we can figure something out here once we have all the information, and we'll go from there. So thank you for taking some time to share your concerns with us today.
Sorry, how long do you think until I hear back about that?
I'm sorry? Say that again?
How long until I hear something back from this now? We've asked our staff to bring back a report by the end of Q1, so the end of March.
but this is pretty straightforward, so we'll probably get a report back in February, I'm going to assume, and we will make a decision. You will be notified when that report comes back to council.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move into item 4.3, which is a deputation from Ann York regarding a council decision-making process. Ann, are you on there? Can you come on board?
Hi, can you hear me?
I can hear you. We can't see you. You turn your camera on?
I thought I did. Just give me a second. There's a hand there as I'm clicking on. There was a pop-up saying start my video. I'm clicking that on. Oh, hold on. Start video. Nothing's happening. I don't see myself.
Okay, well, we can hear you, so go ahead. You've got 5 minutes. Go ahead and do your deputation. If you can get your camera on, great, but if not, we can hear you just fine. The council can hear you, so go ahead.
Can you see me now?
We cannot see you at this time, no. But we can hear you just fine.
Okay. There's a pop-up on my, oh, there we go. Okay, good afternoon, Mr. Mayor and councillors. My name is Ann York. They say that money is the root of all evil. Many extremely bad decisions are made because of money. Once that bad decision is made, it costs even more money to fix it. Nonprofit and not-for-profit organizations all have someone making a lot of money within that organization. Are great decisions being made, or are money-geared decisions being made? If decisions were made and ideas created without them being money-geared, amazing results would be achieved. Would a developer choose to build 10 houses or 100 houses on that same small parcel of land? Do they really care about the people, or do they care more about profits made when 100 houses are squeezed into that small parcel of land? In the past few months, the only great results that I am hearing are from people that are not money geared. They are the residents of Finland Falls that have come forward to give opinions and ideas to help keep Finland from becoming a complete money geared train wreck. These people research, ask a lot of questions, and work tirelessly to open people's eyes. They use rationale and common sense. They make simple and logical observations in their deputations to prevent that train from completely crashing. 15 Zoom deputations were presented, along with many written deputations submitted and emails sent, and only one councillor made any comments at the time, at a meeting. Comments that sounded very believable at the time. But at that October Committee of the Whole meeting, the two comments that were made were both incorrect pieces of information. This really worries me. This is my representative making decisions on my behalf for what they feel is best for me without even consulting with me. In all those deputations that were presented, not one councillor, not even the mayor, asked any questions regarding this town-altering decision. Not only is this appalling representation, it is unacceptable. In all the other deputations that were presented, there was a lot of chatter afterwards, but not for those regarding Juniper Street. At the September Committee of the Whole meeting, I was troubled when I heard the mayor ask, what guarantees are in this proposal that they are going to build affordable housing on it? A councillor stated he needed a comfort level, but will vote yes regardless and deal with it when the time comes. Why vote yes if you are not comfortable and then deal with it later? The land hadn't even been approved yet or voted on, but there was already talk of a shovel going into the ground in the springtime. And no one in the decision-making process is on the same page either. And you wonder why the residents, the taxpayers, are left confused. I have come across 4 different views of what will potentially be built on the Juniper Street parkland, and that was even before the appraisal stage. Laura Carnican, Law Clerk, Realty Services for the City of Kawartha Lakes. The written documentation clearly states for the purpose of low-income housing development. Doug Elmsley, counselor for Finland Falls, in a meeting posted on YouTube. It is not proposing in its package low-cost housing. It is proposing a mixed type of housing in an apartment style that is rent geared to income and affordable as well. Ron Taylor, Chief Administrative Officer for the City of Kawartha Lakes, in a telephone discussion. It's not low-income housing. There will be a few units available for low-income residents. The largest number will be for seniors and those with
I'm just
physical
going to,
disabilities.
Ann, I'm just going to
Yes.
interrupt you for a minute. Your deputation states that you're talking about council's decision-making process. You've already spoken twice to this council about Juniper Street, so I would ask you to keep your deputation generic to the council decision-making process and leave Juniper Street, as you said you would, out of the deputation. Thank you. Please continue.
Okay, Ron Taylor, Chief Administrative Officer, during a telephone discussion. It is not low-income housing. There will be a few units available for low-income residents. The largest number will be for seniors and those with physical disabilities, such as need for wheelchair accessibility. Sandra Barrett, project chairperson, comments in the Lindsay Advocate. Finland Community Housing Initiative venture will be a mix of tenants, with most of the apartments renting at market value, while the remainder will be available to those requiring geared to income housing or assisted living accommodations. How can there be 4 different views on one project? Not one of the last 3 views matches the first view that is written by the law clerk in Realty Services. How can you possibly trust what you give permission to build anywhere will be built? To the residents, it sounds like another project that will just build whatever they want, especially since the same people are involved in other projects that have changed their minds after approval.
Wrap it up,
Ask
please, Ann.
yourself-
Your 5 minutes is up. Please wrap it up.
Ask yourselves, who is involved in the Francis Street project that is no longer for seniors only? Who is involved in the Murray Street project that is no longer for seniors only? Who is involved in the, I'm not supposed to mention, Juniper Street project that is no longer what it was approved to be? Ask yourselves, if you feel 100% confident with this track record. I know I don't, and neither do the residents of Finland Falls. Remember, your bad decisions will cost even more money to fix later. Your bad decisions will cost even more money to fix later, and we don't want our kids stuck with your bad decisions, which sounded like a good idea at the time.
Thanks, Ann.
I'd like to thank
Your time
the
is
2
up.
counselors. I can't thank anybody?
You can do it real quick. Your 5 minutes was up 2 minutes ago.
Okay, I'd like to thank the 2 counselors. I believe it was Seymour Fagan and Councillor Ashmore that voted against the sale of the lands. And I'd like to thank Councillor Ashmore for listening to my suggestion back in October to build a PPE manufacturing plant, because I see that a couple meetings after that, he did bring it up, and now he's pushing forward to the purchase of the land. I think it's a wonderful idea that you're acting on this. I appreciate that.
Thanks, Ann. I'll get a motion to receive the deputation. We'll see if there's any questions. Moved by Councillor Elmsley, seconded by Councillor Vale. Are there any questions for the deputant? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Motion is passed. Anyone opposed? Motion is still passed. Okay, that's it. Thanks, Ann. Thanks for sharing your concerns with us. Appreciate it. Our last deputation is regarding fall leaf pickup. Brian Laley. Mr. Laley, there you are. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, we can hear you just fine, sir. So again, you got 5 minutes. Please go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Brian Laley, and I am a director at the Edgewater Condominiums in Bobcaygeon. I'm a residential taxpayer, and my tax roll number is 165-102-800-218-225. My home is assessed under residential, not multi-unit. This is using the City of Kawartha Lakes tax tables. I'm here today to obtain an answer as to why I have been denied fall leaf pickup on November 6th and 20th past year. City staff and Miller Waste informed me it is because of bylaw 2016-144 passed by council on February 24th, 2020. I personally documented 3 properties in Bobcaygeon that had their leaves picked up on November 6th and 20th. They are all more than 2 units. I have photos and addresses if required. Although they did receive service, it doesn't provide relief for me. Section 301 of the bylaw excludes high-density residential, commercial, industrial, commercial, and seasonal trailer parks from leaf and bulky item pickup. It is my opinion that the writer of the bylaw thought that condominiums are commercial enterprises. Condominium residents are homeowners with a deed and they pay residential property taxes. If the bylaw is allowed to stand as it is, then the city will have at least 2 classes of residential property owners. My neighbor who pays residential property taxes on his home will receive services that I am denied, even though I also pay residential property taxes on my residential home. My assessment is in the same category as my neighbor. I'm not assessed in the multi-residential class. Ontario Regulation 28298 related to assessment states under multi-residential class, and I quote, "There are several types of multi-unit properties that are included in the residential class instead of the multi-unit class, such as condominiums, cooperatives, timeshares, group homes, campgrounds, mobile home parks, and life lease buildings." Bylaw 2016-144 excludes condominiums from leaf and bulky item pickup, but it includes mobile home parks, even though the above regulation indicates that both condos and mobile home parks are in the same class. It is my contention that bylaw 2016-144 is flawed and cannot be used as a lawful reason for denial of service. Denying some residential property owners services that are given to other residential property owners is arbitrary and discriminatory. If the council feels that the bylaw is valid, I have a question for all the councillors to consider. What is stopping council from removing garbage pickup from condominiums? If your answer is we couldn't do that, then how can you remove leaf and bulky items from service? If your answer is we wouldn't do that, then you're saying that you can deny garbage pickup to condominiums. In fact, you're saying you can deny any city service to one class of residential property owners, even if you decide that you want to. Please correct this situation and reimburse the Edgewater condominiums with our costs, which were only mileage and dumping fees. And failing resolution with the city, we will need to seek intervention of other agencies that have the power to reverse discriminatory actions by municipalities. I do have one other question. I was told by city that we didn't have a condominium agreement with the city. How many other condos in the city have an agreement? That concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Laley. What I'll suggest, as I did for the others, is that you make a very valid argument that we receive the deputation and refer it back to staff for a report back, including options for leaf pickup at condominiums and a report back in Q1 of 2021. So that'll enable council to get all the information, see what some of the inconsistencies, if there are any, in this bylaw, and then we can make an informed decision and move forward at that time. So if council's okay with that, I'll ask for a mover and a seconder, and we'll see if there's any questions for you. Councillor Yeo and Richardson, thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Laley? Councillor Seymour Fagan, go ahead.
Yes, hi, Mr. Lilly. I want to say thank you for this and bringing this to our attention. And I know you've been working on this for a while and you've been digging deep, and many departments in the municipality have been involved in this. And I agree that this needs to go back to staff. The mayor's right, and we have a really good look at it. My question is, this fall, is this the first time you have not had leaf pickup?
Yes, this is the first time we've had it for, well, 10 to 20 years anyway.
Okay. Okay. So that's all I wanted to know. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we'll call if there's any other questions, I'll call the question on the motion. All in favor? Thank you. Anyone opposed? That motion is passed. Mr. Laley, we'll get a report back from council. Thank you for bringing this to our attention, and we'll get all the information. You will be informed when this comes back to council, and then once council has all the information, we'll see if we need to adjust that bylaw. But thank you for sharing your concerns with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day. Okay, well, that's our last deputation. We'll move over into item 5.1, which is correspondence regarding a medical supply manufacturing park. Correspondence that was put in, it's in your agenda from Councillor Ashmore. I'll just get a motion to receive the correspondence, please. Councillor Ashmore, will you move that? To receive, and a seconder? Councillor Dunn, thank you. Councillor Ashmore, do you want to speak to it?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Basically, I put it together to just not only just receive this letter that I sent. It's not a memo, it's a letter, correspondence. My feelings are that, we have this land available, and we've been talking about utilizing this particular land. Why not use it for this particular purpose for a multitude of companies? I'll give you an example. Here's a package here of face masks, and they're made in a country that's 11,000 kilometers from here. I mean, this is ridiculous. We need these supplies, and we need the supply chain made here, not only for PPE, but for therapeutics, even vaccines. We're the only country out of the G20 countries that didn't even test our people on vaccines. We weren't even part of the whole testing of these vaccines, but that's another issue on its own. But I really feel that we should be taking the lead here and at least exploring the opportunity of attracting companies here. We have zero commercial development charges up to 27,000 square feet of commercial building. We really need to step it up here, work with planning and economic development, and attract these companies to come here, not only for jobs, for taxation and for our health. So I just wanted to put this idea forward and see if we can maybe at least discuss it. That'd be great.
Thank you. Have you spoken with economic development about this, Councillor Ashmore, business development officer?
I've talked to them, yeah, and obviously they can't do anything until council gives them direction. So I have discussed it with a few companies and economic development. So I'm just waiting to hear back. Obviously, things have to start at council and start the process. So I have started talking to them, but we just have to discuss it here first. So before we go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So we have a motion to receive. Any questions for the councillor's correspondence? We have a motion to receive. All in favor? Anyone opposed? Motion passes. Okay, thank you. We'll move into item 6, which is presentations. Our first presentation is item 6.1, which is the Environmental Business Hero and Environmental Youth Hero Awards presentation. I'm going to turn it over to Councillor Richardson, who's going to make a few introductions, and I believe we have a few guests joining us online to receive their awards. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Councillor Richardson. Go ahead.
Thank you, and through you, the City of Kawartha Lakes Environmental Advisory Committee and Council recognize the following businesses and youths for their outstanding efforts as environmental heroes in our communities. This award is one that is based on nomination from community members to a business or a youth who demonstrates their commitment and positive impact to the environment in their day-to-day operations. We feel it's very important to recognize, as it's been a year of challenges and changes, and the following businesses have made a difference when addressing environmental concerns. We are also proud to recognize our youth leaders for their ongoing environmental projects, encourage them to continue, and encourage other students to do the same and be good stewards. Thank you again to the Environmental Advisory Committee for bringing this initiative to life. Today, Chair Pat Warren will introduce the business winners, and Co-Chair Deborah Pearson will be introducing our youth environmental heroes. Over to you, ladies.
Pat, are you there? We've turned it over to you if you want to come on, and there we are. Can you hear us? Can you hear us, Pat?
Yeah, it just went blank. So.
It's okay. We can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you.
You're freezing up on us, Pat. We're not hearing a word you're saying. So I'm just wondering if you want to turn it over to Deborah Pearson to see if she can take over.
I'd be happy to do that, but I don't have the commentary for the business awards. I only have it for the youth award.
Okay.
There is a slide presentation that we thought would be screen shared as well. So
well, maybe we can put the screen share up, and Pat can maybe phone in because she keeps freezing up. So
no, I'm fine now. I'm here. Okay,
go ahead.
So we're going to start with the first one. Is Boiling Over Coffee Vault. Is an example of a small business making many small changes to reduce their environmental impact. These small changes include switching to slippy lids for cold drinks to reduce the need for straws, switching to paper straws for the drinks that still require them, offering silverware for in-house guests, and having compostable cutlery for those not staying. They use biodegradable to-go soup bowls. They donate their surplus food through foodrescue.ca rather than sending it to the landfill to decompose anaerobically, in which case it would have released methane. They use beeswax wraps to contain their food each night. They just switched to compostable whole bean packaging. They use organic and fair trade beans, chocolate, and teas. And they use compostable tea bags, and they're always looking to do more. Currently, they're exploring compostable cup options. And congratulations to Boiling Over His Coffee Vault. Way to go. Okay, so and the second one we have is Burns Bulk Food. This family business has been serving Lindsay residents for 35 years. The current owner, manager Dan, took over from his father, Dave. Dan's son, Reese, is now assisting with the operation. Burns sells roughly 2,000 bulk food items, so there is considerable variety across many categories: spices and herbs, nuts and dried fruits, seeds and grains, flowers, candy, and chocolate. Bulk food is the environmentally responsible choice for consumers. There is minimal packaging, and the consumers can purchase only quantities they actually need to ensure less food waste. Recently, Burns has taken additional steps to promote zero waste. Shoppers are encouraged to bring their own containers. The containers are weighed and a small sticker is attached. When shoppers check out, the container weight is subtracted from the total. They can use the same containers over and over, and no new plastic is introduced into their homes. As an incentive to shoppers who bring their own containers, Burns is providing a 10% discount for everything purchased in one's own container. That policy is permanently in place now. Way to go, Burns. And our next one is Country Cupboard. And Julia and her team go above and beyond trying to reduce not only their carbon footprint at the store by reducing plastics, making sure products are produced as environmentally friendly as possible, and by encouraging other local businesses to do the same. They offer a discount on your bulk purchases if you bring your own reusable container, and they have glass jars available for customers that have been sterilized to use for free instead of using plastic bags. Julia has made the switch to compostable spoons and containers for their yogurt machines. She is a real environmentalist. She also uses these practices at home and is very passionate about the environment. She has also spoken at different events offering environmental ideas and suggestions that others can implement at home to make a difference. She has also made much effort to provide environmentally friendly cleaning products and zero waste items to customers. She also got large recyclable bins donated to the beach park and went weekly and dragged them to the roadside for pickup. 10 minutes of conversation with Julia just gives you energy to do more to make our planet a healthier place. Congratulations, Julia. And Julia, I gotta say, she used to be a member of CLEAC, and she's brought a lot of positive energy to our community. And the next one we have is Dive Kawartha, Chris Reynolds. Dive Kawartha has made a massive impact on the Kawartha Lakes community by hosting multiple Dive Against Debris events called Dive Against Debris. The last event, they removed over 700 pounds of garbage from underwater in the local rivers and waterways. They also have a fun promotion against single-use plastics. If any of the employees spot you using one of their stainless steel straws, you get a free tank fill up. We need more dedicated people for the environment like Chris and Dive Kawartha crew. Congratulations, Dive Kawartha. And the next one is Flex Fitness. Kathy Steffler is an environmental business hero for many reasons. Her fitness studio has become more of a community hub rather than a business. She provides child-friendly fitness classes and a social space for parents to interact. Kathy's efforts are an important example of how small changes can create a big impact. Everything she does can be replicated by her clients at home. Kathy leads by example, and if more businesses implemented her strategies, Kawartha Lakes would be a greener place to live. Kathy goes above and beyond to ensure the environmental footprint of her fitness studio is as small as possible. She provides water, encourages people to use refillable containers during their workout. She also provides coffee and tea and glassware so that people can comfortably enjoy social time after their workout using single use to-go beverage containers. You won't find any vending machines filled with plastic bottles at Flex Fitness. Kathy puts in an extra effort and would rather do dishes than create unnecessary plastic waste. For those that may bring items to the building, Kathy has recycling bins readily available to allow her customers to dispose of their waste responsibly. Congratulations, Kathy. And our next one is Lamantia's Country Market. Dave Lamantia has, with little fanfare, made his grocery store a model of environmental responsibility. Here are some of the actions he has taken. Last year, before the city's policy on plastic recycling for businesses was changed, he was achieving a 78% waste diversion rate. Vegetable scraps from the store go to a farmer for animal feed or composting. Meat scraps go to a meat renderer. When purchasing from the Ontario Food Terminal, he avoids unrecyclable waxed cardboard and returns many produce containers to the terminal for reuse. The plastic bags he makes available to shoppers are clear and low density. This makes them strong and appropriate for use by homeowners who have small amounts of garbage to put out for collection, meeting the city's clear plastic bag requirement for curbside collection. Also, 144 solar panels are mounted on the roof and side of the building. They generate 30 kilowatts that he sells to the grid. All light fixtures are being replaced with LED, and he retains ballast rather than replacing them. Display cases for dairy products have been upgraded. They are energy efficient. Congratulations, Dave from Lamantias. And our last one, but not the least, is Unwrapped. Jenny Connell opened Unwrapped January 2020. Congratulations on your first year. After many years of struggling to find sustainable options for household goods in Kawartha Lakes, she made it possible by selling refillable bulk items such as shampoo, conditioner, environmentally friendly cleaning products, and soaps in order to reduce the amount of plastic bottles being purchased in our area. She also sells eco-friendly alternatives to other disposable items such as dental floss, facial cleaning pads, all-purpose cleaning cloths, and shaving products. More importantly, Jenny is committed to constantly improving her efforts to make it easier for CKL residents to make environmentally friendly choices. She is always willing to chat about ways to reduce your household waste and has a suggestion box at the front counter to allow residents to have their say about what they might like to see in the store in the future. The Unwrapped store has made it so much easier for everyone to use less water in their households. Unwrapped is a business that not only strives to be green themselves, but that encourages individuals to use sustainable products and reuse items. Unwrapped is a store you would expect to see in bigger cities than ours. In addition, the store carries products that are primarily from Canadian sources. Congratulations to all our business environmental heroes. And this is so wonderful, especially during these very difficult times. So I'm just so heartened to see so many great environmental businesses in city of Kawartha Lakes. So just, we're going to take a screenshot. So I want all our heroes to, on 3, say green. So 1, 2, 3, green. So we can do a nice screenshot. Thank you very much. And I'm going to pass it on to Deborah Pearson to talk about our youth environmental hero. Thanks, Deborah.
Thank you, Pat. Well, it's my great pleasure to award our Environmental Youth Hero Award for this year to the student leadership team of King Albert Public School. It's comprised of 21 members from last year's grade 5 and 6 class. The student leadership team at King Albert in Lindsay decided to support the city's voluntary ban on plastic shopping bags when they observed that our landfill sites and the Scugog River shoreline were a sea of plastic grocery bags flying in the wind and stuck in the trees. The students and staff embarked on an ambitious project to educate their school and the wider community about the impact plastic shopping bags is having on the environment. To facilitate change, the team worked on a project to design and produce shopping bags that, with the partnership of local businesses, could be given away to the school's families and business customers to replace the use of plastic bags with reusable bags bearing the sponsoring business logos during Earth Week. Now, the project was delayed due to the pandemic, as many things have been, but the leadership team now has new faces, and the initiative is still very much alive, and plans are to continue the project through 2021. This is a commendable project that brings the school and business community together to demonstrate that they can make a difference in our community with one little initiative to make a greener, greater place to live. So congratulations to the leadership team of King Albert and the staff, Ashley Marie O'Keefe and Principal Dean Burke, who were your leaders. And we're very pleased to see so many young people standing up and taking care of the environment today and in the future. We know that you'll be our leaders. So thank you very much and congratulations.
Hey.
Thank you, everyone. Way to go, King Albert. Well done. And I know I speak for all the council when I say thank you. I'm sorry we can't get together in council chambers and give you the recognition and that you deserve. Get some photos. Your contributions to our community are what make our community a better place to live. And on behalf of all of us, I just want to say thank you very much for what you're doing. And King Albert over there, keep up the great work and thank you. Have a great day. Stay safe. And well done.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll get a motion to receive the presentation, please. Councillor Richardson and Dunn. Call the question. All in favor? Thank you. Anyone opposed? Motion has passed. Thank you very much. Have a great day. That'll move us down to item 6.2, which is the roads database update. Director Robinson is going to give us a presentation. There is a PowerPoint presentation. Hello, Brian. Can you hear us?
I can. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you okay. You're up, so
Perfect.
go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to council, I just wanted to take this opportunity to provide a brief update on the roads database. I'll try to be as brief as possible. Just before we get really into the whole presentation, we'll want to take the opportunity to thank Brenda Stonehouse. Brenda's been instrumental in coordinating and leading a lot of the work behind the database. Also to roads operations staff, realty services, engineering staff that have contributed to building this database. As it says there, the database began back in 2017 when staff really acknowledged and recognized that we do not have a fulsome, complete, and accurate representation of our roads infrastructure within the city. So we started with the roads database, the roads needs assessment that engineering completes on a regular basis from 2016 and built from there. So currently there are 4,554 road segments in the database. You can move to the next slide. So why do we need a database? It's really important to understand the ownership of a road segment, the status of a road segment, and the services provided by the city. That's really the core of the information, but really there's a lot of residual and other benefits to other departments and divisions. The data is owned by many different areas. It's input and used by multiple divisions and departments within the city. Engineering, realty services, roads, planning, building, all have access and are using the database to understand development and other requirements within the city, in addition to just simply services. Move to the next slide. So what is a road segment? A road segment can be a section of road from intersection to intersection, but we've also defined a segment to broke up anywhere a maintenance or ownership changes. So we could have, for instance, a 1 kilometer long section of road where we plow the first 200 meters, but we grade in the summer up to 700 meters. We'll break that segment of road into 3 different segments so that we can actually clarify exactly what services are being provided to what segment of road. They're all different lengths, and it depends on really what services and ownership are being provided. So we move to the next slide. I want to talk a bit about ownership. Although it may seem obvious that segments in a municipal road sometimes are owned by the city, it's not always the case. So in the database, we've identified ownership as either public authority having jurisdiction, which is the definition that comes through the legal reviews, or they can be private or a combination of public and private. We are trying to list all roads in the database, including private roads, so that we have an understanding of what services, if any, are provided on those roads. So when we look at status of roads, we can have assumed roads, assumed by service, same in general effect, unassumed road, private, or combination. So just to give you a brief, I think we've had this conversation many times, but just a brief understanding of what they are. If we move to the next slide, an assumed road is roads that are legally assumed by bylaw and receive municipal services. This includes winter maintenance, summer maintenance, ditching, draining, drainage, brushing, pretty much all activities that a municipality would have. And they're included in the capital plan, so they would be considered roads that would be resurfaced or reconstructed when engineering deems those requirements have met. So the next slide is unassumed roads. Unassumed roads are roads that are owned by the municipality but have not been legally assumed for maintenance. Council approved a seasonal level of service policy for qualifying unassumed roads to provide some service. Again, that SLOS policy identifies it will provide some grading to certain roads. Council has directed a status quo for the time being on services. So there are 43 road segments receiving services outside of this policy, and will continue to do so until we get different direction from council. Just as a bit of a scale, economy of scale for council. The next section, the next slide, talks about private roads. Again, private roads are roads not maintained in municipality. They could be privately owned by a resident, a homeowner association, province, or federal government. Council's provided direction to maintain for those services as well. So the municipality is technically trespassing if services provided without an agreement on a private road. It's just a flag. And there are 63 private road segments receiving some level of service without agreement. There's 22 LSAs for private roads currently representing almost 25 kilometers of road. So it gives you some economy of scale of where we're at with the database right now. And the last section is combination roads. Those are roads where they transition from private ownership to municipal ownership. There are 56 combination roads receiving some level of service, some with and some without an agreement in place. So again, it just gives you a bit of a scale. So the next few slides are going to go through some data that's been extracted or we've been able to extract from the database, and we can pull much more detailed data out of the database if we need to. This just gives council some understanding of where we're at. So segments, Lindsay, not surprising, having the most intricate local urban network, has the highest number of road segments, being 831. A fairly consistent distribution over the depots across the work area. So the next slide shows kilometers, and this is where you start to see the numbers reverse, where you can see we have a fairly consistent length of roads within our depots, ranging from 301 to 356 kilometers, with Lindsay having the least amount of kilometers, although they had the highest number of segments. And that really comes down to how it's broken out. If you total those up, we're close to 2,800 kilometers of roads, where historically we've always been identifying around the 2,700 mark. So as we continue to assume roads and really refine the database, we're growing that understanding of what infrastructure that we do have. The next slide starts to break down into ownership. You can see here we have 29 segments of assumed by service, 19 assumed by of assumed roads. So those are roads that are assumed by bylaw. It's the circled area that we want to continue to work and focus on, which is the 357 unassumed roads, 285 private roads, and 63 combination roads that are listed in the database, and how we continue to handle those roads. If we move to the next slide, although this one is a bit of a jumble to read, really the main key I wanted you to take out of this is where our service is all over the map. There's no real consistent level of service right now. If you look at unassumed roads, some of them are, a large portion of them are unmaintained. Some of them get summer only, some get winter only, some get a combination of both. And it's the same for all three of those categories, unassumed, private, and combination roads. So what we're trying to do is really to define the services and work with, ultimately the goal will be to work with council on what is the appropriate level of service for those roads. That's not the intent for today, but will likely be a need at some point down the road. If I've learned anything through the processes that we've had, is that pretty well we're going to have to go through on a road by road basis, because every road has unique histories and unique requirements that contribute to it. So moving to the next slide, you can see here that we have 48 combination roads receiving service of the 63 in the database. On a private road, we have 63 of 285 receiving service, and the unassumed roads, we have 68 of 357. So that totals a fairly significant length of 130, almost 132 kilometers of road that we're providing service to in some fashion. That's a significant impact on our operational activities and requirements. Just to give, again, this is just information for economy of scale for now. If we move to the next slide, the next few slides really just break things down a little bit more into some pie charts to help everybody understand the kind of the level of. So this breaks unassumed private and combination roads down into where we have agreements and seasonal level of service activity occurring. So the large portion are still within unassumed roads, which is probably not a bad thing considering, you know, those are property that we currently own, but you can still see that there's over 30% of the activity happening on private and or combination roads. So if we move forward to the next slide, what we did is we took the private section and broke it out further into areas that have been receiving historically full service in accordance with the database, winter only, summer only, and then summer and winter. So that's what's happening again is just trying to demonstrate that variety and really inconsistent level of service that's happening. And it's created historically over service. So if we move to the next slide, a very similar picture for unassumed roads, where you see a pretty inconsistent level of service happening for our unassumed roads. And then the last slide is combination, where you can see the bulk of the combination roads are receiving you know, full maintenance, so to speak, with some summer and winter maintenance happening concurrent as well. So those are just some charts to help council understand, you know, some of the data that we're able to extract. And again, we can extract much more information out of the database as we need to. So from how does this impact us? The capital plan, there's 108 road segments that are unassumed, private or combination, that are receiving some form of maintenance activity that are not part of the capital plan, which is an additional 62 kilometers of roads. Again, adding that road infrastructure to the database is going to be significant from a capital expenditure and requirement perspective. Majority of these roads don't meet minimum standards for assumption. So again, that'll be some of the challenges of how do we handle that. Next slide, and just to wrap up quickly in the next two slides here is really just moving forward where we're going from here. So we're going to continue to update the inventory and the metadata within the database, ensuring that we have accurate information on activities and services being provided. We're going to continue to work with engineering to add new road inventory when assumed through bylaw. Continue to have the legal review of the ownership, which we're a small portion of the way through. We're going to continue to use the database for roads needs assessment. So engineering will now, instead of looking at that 2016 database, we'll look at this new roads database as the key or trigger for roads needs assessment. We're going to continue to use the database to refine our asset management plan, and then potentially look at other uses such as where we're providing waste services and so on, and identify those within the database as well. So there's options to expand the use of the database. And then in the next and the last slide really is to take a look at where do we go from here from a council perspective. Again, council decisions on level of service for individual roads could be based on many factors. And I've listed a number of them there: legal obligation, length, construction standards, the number of residents, historical service, capability, cost, you know, equitable service delivery, staff resources, you know, agreements and service. So there's a lot of factors in there that we're going to have a continued conversation, and continued information will be provided to council. I just wanted to have this touch point because it's been a couple of years since we've had an opportunity to speak to council about where we're at with the roads infrastructure and road database. So if there are questions about this kind of summary, by all means, I'm willing to answer them.
Thanks, Brian. We'll just get a motion to receive, and we'll see if there's any questions to receive your presentation. Councillor Elmsley and Yo, thank you. Councillor Elmsley, you have a question? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the director. When you talk about combination roads, the combination, I'm assuming, is based on segments where some of the segments are owned by the city and receive service, and other segments of the road are either private or unassumed and either receive or don't receive service. When you're talking about the combination, are those numbers included in the fully assumed or the unassumed road numbers as well?
Sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor. So a combination road doesn't speak to service. It speaks to the ownership of the road. So a combination road would be a road that has portions that are owned privately and or through the other levels of government, and portions that are owned by the municipality. So a very good case in that would be Indian Point Road. Indian Point Road crosses through M&R property, goes through a private cottage association, and then to municipally is not assumed, but a municipal section of road at the end, a municipally owned section of road. So that's how we define a combination road. The numbers in that, again, we can pick and define how we totalize those roads through the database. But the numbers are within those, absolutely.
Yeah, I understand what a combination road is. My question is, it is when you define something as a combination road and it's a combination of fully assumed and it's a combination of private, is that number also in the private road portion and in the fully assumed portion?
That section would not be in there, through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor. So if we have a road that is defined as a combination road, but it's fully maintained, i.e. we provide full service, it would be defined that way. If we have most of the combination roads have varying levels of service, so they would be unassumed or seasonal maintenance, and they would be defined in those categories. So if there is if there is a combination road that receives full service the entire length of the road, it would fall into that category of fully maintained. But again, most roads don't have that status, so they fall into different sections, right? So again, they're broken out by segment too. So where we would have go back to Indian Point Road, for instance, that first section road owned by the M&R would be a segment. And then that segment would have a definition under there, right? So the database does not have that full combination road. It has the segment. So that particular road would be likely broken into 3 segments. Be broken into the M&R segment that sees it receiving seasonal service in the summer and in the winter. And then it'll also move forward into the next segment and define how we are with that. Now we have an agreement in place with that particular association in the M&R to provide service. So that typically falls outside of it as well. So it gets very complicated very quickly, but I understand the question.
Okay, because what I was concerned was that we were double counting in some instances and inflating how many kilometers of different roads we had. My next question is, you're under capital plan, it says where you're talking about unassummed private or combination roads, that the majority of these roads do not meet minimum standards for assumption. How many of our assumed roads would not meet the minimum standards for assumption?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, I don't have that information off the top of my head. The roads that have been assumed either through bylaw or assumed through service, we have an obligation legally to maintain those roads. The roads that are part of these unassumed private or combination roads, there's no legal requirement to provide service. And I think that's the definition and the difference, where it becomes from an engineering and a practical decision to a political decision. And we'll have to have those conversations with council moving forward.
Yeah, my point is, Brian, that we do have roads that are fully assumed that do not meet our minimum standards. And I didn't expect you to have the actual numbers. I just wanted to make the point that some of our municipal roads that we maintain on a full-time basis would not meet our minimum standards if we had to adopt them today.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the council, you're absolutely correct. There's been historical assumptions that have put us in that situation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions regarding the presentation? Brian, when do you see some information coming back to council for decision making, or when do you see the next touch point? Some timelines?
To you, Mr. Mayor, we're actively working with the Realty Services Division to define the ownerships. That's going to take some time to go through. Working with Robin and Sherry on that. I'm not 100% sure. I'm hoping potentially to come back later this year with some additional information, but it may not be till 2022.
Thank you. Any further questions for the director? Seeing none, we have a motion to receive. I'll call the question. All in favor? Thank you. Anyone opposed? Motion has passed. Thank you, Director. We also have a report that goes along with that. That report, RD 2021-001, Roads Database Update, be received, and that this recommendation be brought forward to Council for consideration at the next regular Council meeting. Get a mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Deputy Mayor O'Reilly, seconded by Councillor Yeo. Any questions regarding the report? I'll call the question then. All in favor? Thank you. Anyone opposed? Thank you. That motion is passed. So before we get in, thank you for that, Director. So before we go into reports, I'm just going to break from the agenda. There's been an announcement, obviously an announcement at 1 o'clock from the province. And I'm just going to ask our CAO, Ron Taylor. I know he's got to run and deal with some other stuff now, obviously, but I've just asked him to give us an update so we're all on the same page at some of the announcements the province has made today. So go ahead, Ron.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you, I did forward to council and staff some updates and announcements that have been coming out from the province earlier today. So as you know, we continue to be in a provincial shutdown that was effective on Boxing Day and was targeted to stay in effect up until January 23rd. And practically and locally speaking, there were some adjustments to service that we needed to make, both public facing as well as internally, how we operate sort of within our administration buildings and so on. So things like required masking in common spaces. There were some services that were suspended during this shutdown, things like aquatics programs, arena use, fitness facilities, and so on. And that continues right up to this point. Also interactions. So for example, the mayor mentioned at the opening today, electronic meetings as in order to discourage public gatherings or gatherings of individuals. And so this shutdown remains in effect right now. As of earlier today, the province declared a second state of emergency provincially, and that's based on the provincial numbers across the province and the projections that they were provided today. That declaration is immediate. So as of right now, we are in a provincial state of emergency. Effective this Thursday at midnight or 12:01, the government is issuing a stay-at-home order, which is requiring everyone to remain at home with exceptions for essential functions and purposes. So things like grocery store, accessing grocery stores, pharmacies, healthcare services, or essential work. Outdoor organized public gatherings and social gatherings are further restricted to a limit of 5 people with some limited exceptions. And this is consistent with a lot of the rules that were put in place during the first provincial lockdown back in March of 2020. Individuals are required to wear a mask or face covering in indoor areas of businesses or organizations that are open. It is now recommended outdoors as well when you can't physically distance more than 2 meters. All non-essential retail stores, so that includes hardware stores, alcohol retailers, and those offering curbside pickup must open no earlier than 7 a.m. and close no later than 8 p.m. The restricted hours of operations do not apply to stores that sell primarily food, pharmacy, convenience stores, restaurants, gas stations, etc. Non-essential construction will be further restricted, including below-grade construction, with the exemption of survey work. So I'm just skimming through the announcement, Mr. Mayor. There is a lot of details with respect to these particular orders. The province will be providing the authority necessary to the police services as well as bylaw enforcement to enforce these various orders that are either now or upcoming. And schools in the GTA will not return to in-person instruction until February 10th. And my read currently is that that does not apply to schools in Kawartha Lakes at this time. So I'll leave it at that, Mr. Mayor. I did circulate forward to council the provincial press release, and we'll be reviewing sort of all of the different orders in detail and sending out further communications both internally and out to the public later today and before Thursday, 12:01. I'll pause there, Mr. Mayor. Happy to answer any questions if I can that you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. I know you just got the information like we did, so thank you for the update. Are there any questions directed toward the CAO at this point? As you said, we'll get further information. You'll get us some more information as we figure out how this affects the city and the city services. So, seeing no questions, thanks for the update. Appreciate it. You do what you need to do, and I'll just ask that we take 5-minute break. And come back here in 5 minutes and we'll deal with the report. So thank you for the update, and we'll be back in 5 minutes. Okay, we're going to call the meeting back to order. Just before we do reports, just as a quick follow-up to Ron's comments, I'm doing an update with the press tomorrow, just before noon, just update them on our situation and what's going on here with council and everything else. And just for your benefit or everybody's benefit, we are not considering declaring a local state of emergency at this time. I'm not as the mayor. We are in constant communication with council, as you know, so if we decide to go that direction, then it would be my preference to make that decision as a council entirety. So we'll have that conversation if we need to. So I just wanted to update you on that. So we'll move into item 7, which is reports. Our first report is regarding the municipal election in 2022, regarding a voting method, which needs to be done before May of this year, a process put in place. I will turn it over to our clerk, city clerk, Kathy Ritchie, to give us a 2-minute overview, and then we can ask some questions. Go ahead, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. The purpose of this report is to obtain Council's approval regarding the voting method for the October 2022 election. This decision will enable staff to move forward with the planning and the RFP process. To give a bit of background and highlights of the report, for the 2018 election, Council approved for the first time the online telephone voting. Along with Kawartha Lake's popularity grew in Ontario, there were 84 more municipalities than the previous election. And the method of mail-in ballots previously used by the City of Kawartha Lakes dropped by 46%. The city's 2018 voter turnout was marginally lower than 2014. However, Kawartha Lakes voter turnout was marginally higher than the provincial average. Where in 2014, the city's voter turnout was below the provincial average. So not necessarily depending on the voting method, it could be the environment of whether you go up or down. The city clerk is responsible to ensure the integrity, security, confidentiality of the voting process, further that it's fair, non-biased, and accessible. The election policies and processes provide the tools needed to achieve the utmost integrity of the election. Even though there is always room for improvement, I believe the benefits are significant, including reduction in errors and spoiled ballots, reductions in costs, the number of staff required, with a $53,000 savings from 2014. The electronic vote eliminates errors in manual count, which results and then results in an accurate and quick publication of results. The 10-day voting period in multiple voting locations with staff assistance throughout the city was extended with extended hours on election day. It ensures persons with disabilities are not disenfranchised from voting. Increased accessibility for residents abroad and for persons with difficulties in traveling or reduced mobility was a benefit. Long-term care was taken care of with the new technology where we actually had in-person staff assist prior to an election day for all long-term and retirement facilities. Alternatively, telephone voting for those who do not wish to utilize online voting was available and supports many of the goals and enablers within the adopted strategic plan. As I mentioned, there's always room for improvement. So the improvements for 2022 that we have considered, we will build on the user satisfaction and confidence in the system. That's by education and public engagement. Vote cast confirmation. The system will provide a confirmation number to the elector to verify that the vote has been cast and recorded in the system. That goes on further to provide the confidence in the system. So improve the script for telephone voting for clarity and vote cast confirmation. The RFP to select the online telephone vendor will ensure that all risks are addressed, including cybersecurity and more than sufficient connectivity and server capacity. Other alternatives were considered. Other methods have been considered, including a hybrid solution, which is more costly for equipment, supplies, and labor, but does not eliminate the limitations of a paper-based system of voting, which are subject to human error, tabulator malfunctions, and the risks associated with seasonal and public health conditions. To maintain and build on the advancements achieved through the internet telephone voting, no other alternatives are proposed. Should Council wish to direct other options, it's recommended that consultation with staff occur. The recommendation is to maintain and build on the advancements that were achieved in 2018 through electronic voting, while implementing improvements that are still cost-effective and accessible. Therefore, staff are recommending that the report we received that internet telephone for the 2022 municipal election be approved and a bylaw be brought forward to Council.
Thank you. Questions? Councillor Elmsley, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the clerk. What, if anything, is being done about the accuracy of the voter list? We continue over the years to use, well, I think we use the MPAC list, and I've found that it has a great many problems with it. Are we going to be using that same list? Are there any plans to vet it so that we can be sure of its accuracy?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there has been an overview and a study of the voters list through many associations, particularly the working group through the AMCTO. Elections Ontario will be taking over the voters list, but not in time for the 2022 election, so it will remain MPAC's responsibility. We have been using tools to help us review the voters list and try to eliminate duplications, those that should not be on the list because they've moved or they've passed. So the clerk's office has been working very hard and will right up until the day to ensure that we have the best list possible. But the quick answer is no, MPAC is still responsible for the 2022 election voters list.
Okay, thank you for that, Mr. Mayor. I'm quite happy to move the recommendation as printed.
Okay, I'll accept that, and then we'll see if there's any more questions. That the report Municipal Elections 2022 voting method be received, that the voting method of internet telephone for the 2022 municipal election be approved, that a bylaw be brought forward to Council authorizing the alternative voting method as required by the Municipal Elections Act as amended, Section 42(1)B, and that this recommendation be brought forward to Council for consideration at the next regular Council meeting. Moved by Councillor Elmsley. Anybody want a second? Second by Councillor Richardson. Councillor Yeo, you had a question earlier. You want to go ahead?
Yeah, thank you. Last election, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought the company who got the tender to do it had gotten so many tenders that they couldn't keep up with the pace, and we had some large delays because they were so busy and they couldn't handle it. So are we putting any safeguards in the tendering process this time to avoid that? If it was a problem, I'm just going off my memory, so sometimes that's not always good.
No, I think in this case, it's you're bang on, but I'll turn it over to the clerk. Go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Our previous vendor, it was actually the connectivity, and the company that they had secured for the connectivity, and it wasn't the system itself. It was, of course, those voters are waited to the last minute, and there was a surge between 6 o'clock or 5 o'clock and 8 o'clock, the voting day, and the company that was to provide the connectivity did not have the connectivity width that they were supposed to have, and there was no one through that company who was able to fix the problem before the end of the election day. In our RFP, lessons learned, so in our RFP, as I talked about, we are going to ensure that there is the provision for cybersecurity, connectivity, and capacity.
Very good. Okay. Question, Councillor Vail, go ahead, and then I have Councillor Ashmore.
My original question was similar to Councillor Yo's, but I guess where I was going to it is it's basically the same thing. If there's some sort of connectivity issue, it's great, you know, off the tender period at the start that they say that they can do it, that there's not going to be an issue. But on election day, as we know, I'm going to guess it's going to be the same in 2022, that the majority of people are going to wait till the last minute, and it's going to be between 5 and the closing of the polls. And if something goes down, would we not be smarter to put some sort of backup in play? Like in 2014, Peterborough had paper ballots the day of the election, and they came out looking like geniuses compared to everybody else by offering paper ballots on the day of election to avoid that issue. So is that something that we should be considering or looking at as a backup?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, as I say, lessons learned, and we will prepare a business continuity plan for the 2022 elections process to make sure that we do have a backup plan and that we're ready to implement that. Even though it was disheartening, especially our first time having internet telephone voting, having the system go down because there wasn't the broadband capacity, as compared to it's not that they didn't have the capacity in their server, it's the actual broadband internet that went down. We will have a business continuity plan in place to ensure that there is a backup. The good news is we extended the election to 24 hours. We gained another 2,000 votes in that time period. So people were still able to cast their ballots.
You good with that answer, Councillor Vail? Good? Okay. Councillor Ashmore, you had a question? Go ahead, sir.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I have some questions to the clerk. Thanks for the report. First question is doing testing. Are we going to be testing the system rigorously before the actual 10 days of voting, like a really stringent test to see if it works? That's really the key to a lot of this here. So are we going to be doing the testing ourselves, or does this electronic system, somebody else does the testing? Do we have any control over that? First, that's my first question. And will we be doing the testing ourselves to see if it works?
So there's actually two answers to your question, Councillor Ashmore. One is yes, we did testing in 2018. We had several pilot tests done to make sure that there was integrity in the system. In addition to that, we hired a third-party company along with the City of Peterborough and the County of Peterborough to do cybersecurity testing. So yes, several tests were done on the system, both security and functionality.
Okay, thanks. The next question is, a lot of people prefer voting in person. So for example, at the libraries or the service centers, but they couldn't vote on the weekends because those buildings were closed. Are we going to open up these buildings and let people have the ability, say for example, they're up for their weekend and they can't vote in person and they want to vote? 99% of people have a telephone, but not 99% of people have a computer. And some of them prefer to physically vote. Will we be opening up libraries, service centers and extending the hours and having them open on the weekend, maybe just one weekend. Would that be a possibility?
Yes, of course.
Okay, my answer was, or my question was answered through Councillor Elmsley about the MPAC. Scrutineers, when the voting is counted, will the scrutineers be allowed to physically be in that room? Before, I wasn't there, but it's a question that a lot of people have asked. Why were scrutineers not allowed to witness the tabulation? And will they be allowed this time?
Yes.
Oh, sorry, that was yes. Okay, good. And the
Through
last
the-
question was voter ID. I believe in your report it said 1,469 undocumented voters or unverified voters. That was 4.2%. Could you explain what unknown voters were, that 1,469? Like they did vote, but they were undocumented.
It's not that they were undocumented, it was the fact that we didn't identify whether they were seasonal or permanent residents. Let me just go to the report. When you talk about undocumented, it has a certain sort of meaning in some people's mind, but...
Well, it says unknown, so unverified, undocumented, basically it's the same thing, but it says 1,469 were unknown. It kind of, that word doesn't really feel good, you know, when you see that number, 4.2% of the voters were unknown. It's in one of those charts there. I can't bring it up here in front of me, but I did read it. It said unknown. I'm just wondering if that's going to be, if that could be clarified or if that could be prevented the next time.
So again, they were on the voters list. They did submit their vote. It is broken down by residency, whether it's you're a resident or non-resident in the municipality or other unknown, and I'll certainly get you a definition. It's not that they were undocumented, it was a fact, and they were legitimate voters. It's just they weren't put into a classification between not a resident and a resident. But I'll get you a definition for that.
Yeah, thanks. And just one final question, please. You mentioned a company called MVV. Is that the company that did it the last time? MVV?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the vendor the last election that was Dominion Voting. And we also have DataFix and a couple of other companies that manage some of our election processes for us. But the actual election, voting online and telephone, was Dominion Voting.
So, Councillor, just for qualification, the MVV is the Municipal Voter View. It's a software program that assists with the elector, the candidate, and the management, data cleansing, identifying reports and such. It's a software program that's used. That's what MVV is, that was used in the past. And to your previous question about unknown, out of the 25,280 people that voted, 16 was all that were unknown. I don't know where you're getting the 1,400. 16 they couldn't identify whether they were seasonal or a permanent resident in the city. So you'll have to clarify with the clerk later on where you're getting the 1,400, because I don't have it on my chart.
It was in the chart there.
Okay.
So the MVV, does the clerk have the ability to override anything? So you're saying that that's a municipal voting system or a type of a system that overrides. I'm not quite sure how a municipal system overrides a private company. How does that do that?
So,
I'm not the only one that's just asking. I think there's some confusion there because we have two different systems here, MVV and you have Dominion Voting. So which one would have the authority, basically?
So actually, the authority lies in the clerk's office. We use, as I mentioned, we use several applications for different purposes Dominion voting was for votes. We have no authority to override any votes through Dominion. Some of the other data fix and the voter view was to ensure that we update the voters list as much as possible through the forms that are certified to either change or add or delete people from the voters list. And then data fix was also one of the tools that we used. So the clerk's office, the returning officer, does not have the authority to override any votes cast or information in Dominion. However, we do have control over cleansing, fixing, adding, and deleting to the voters list.
Okay, I'm not sure what that word cleansing means, but I'll leave it at that.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, cleansing would be removing people that were deceased, people that have moved out of the municipality, or are no longer qualified as an elector of the City of Kawartha Lakes.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions regarding this report or the motion that's been proposed? Okay, I'm going to call the question. All in favor? Thank you. Anyone opposed? Motion has passed. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Item 7.2 is, I'll get Robin to come on the line if she's there. Proposed surplus declaration and closure, sale of a portion of road allowance adjacent to 2 Omega Road in Kirkfield. I think at this point it's pretty straightforward according to the maps, but Robin, I think this and 7.3 are neighbors. They're right beside each other, so they're 2 separate reports, but really the same story. So do you want to give us a quick overview on what's being proposed here? I don't really want to read this whole motion, but I will if I have to. But give us a quick overview, if you would, on the 2, and then we'll deal with them both.
Certainly. So you are correct. The reports at 7.2 and 7.3 of the agenda being the sale of 2 Omega Road in Kirkfield and 2 Jasper Drive in Kirkfield, which are beside each other. So it is confusing, but if you look at Appendix D, you'll see the map. These are 2 properties that have a rather wide road allowance, so greater than the 66-foot standard width. In front of both of their properties, it's treed. It's not being used as the traveled roadway. You saw that there was a deputation on this agenda from a gentleman who was concerned that we might be selling the traveled portion of the road, and that was the only concern that was brought up and was rectified, as we would just be selling the treed portion of the lot. You will see that there is a subject to, which is always a concern, other instruments. So Realty Services took a look at that and determined that the interests registered on this title actually pertain to another part of the road and not these 2 parts. So there's nothing stopping the sale of these 2 parcels. The recommended sale price for each of these, which would be higher than the set minimums in the bylaw, is $5,000 per, plus all costs.
Thank you. Any questions regarding the report while we have Robin on the line? Anybody want to move the recommendation? Councillor Yeo, you'll move it as printed. Thank you. Councillor Dunn, you'll second. Thank you. Any questions regarding 2 Omega Road in Kirkfield? I'll call the question then. All in favor? Thank you. Anyone opposed? That motion has passed. Thank you. The next report while you're here, Robin, is, like you say, the neighbor, different address, but right next door, 2 Jasper Drive in Kirkfield. Councillor Yeo, will you move that one as well? Thank you. Second by Councillor or Deputy Mayor O'Reilly. Thank you. Any questions? I'll call the question. All in favor? Thank you. Anyone opposed? Thank you. That motion has passed. Thank you, Robin. You're still with us. We'll go to 7.4, so don't disappear. The sale potential surplus and sale of city-owned property municipally addressed as between 1474 and 1462 Fleetwood Road in the geographic township of Manvers. Do you want to give us a quick update on that one, Robin? Go ahead.
Certainly. So this again is a proposed surplus and sale of city-owned property. This is a developable lot. This matter came to council through a deputation by Ms. Darylyn Jones, owner of the adjacent parcel to this property. Council directed that staff prepare it for sale, direct sale for fair market value plus all costs to Ms. Jones. And in responding to that direction, we had to do the advertising per the bylaw. There was interest in the market in purchasing this, but we did advise people that were interested that we were directed to sell this property directly, and this will then further enable us to get to the final closure of this sale, the final transfer over to Ms. Jones.
Thank you. Any questions regarding the report? Councillor Elmsley?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Ms. Carlson. When this sale goes through, I believe that those properties will then be merged and be considered one property. So they, unless they are sold to a third party with a different name?
That is correct. When there is a whole of a lot or block in a subdivision, it won't merge, but this actual was never part of a subdivision. It looks like subdivision lots, but it wasn't a registered plan of subdivision. So therefore the two will merge. And if Ms. Jones, who now has, when she acquires the property, will have a very large parcel. If she's interested in severing off a portion of her parcel, she would do so through the city through the severance process.
Is she aware of this?
I don't know because I haven't spoken to her directly. However, she should be aware because the reason why she's purchasing this is that her garage is within the side yard setback and in fact encroaches a little bit into the neighboring property. So I would expect that she would be aware that she couldn't sell, she would need a lot line adjustment at the very least.
Can we ensure that she's made aware that this will occur?
Certainly.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions regarding the report? Anybody want to move the recommendation as printed? Councillor Richardson, second by Councillor Seymour Fagan. Thank you. Any further questions? I'll call the question. All in favor? Thank you. Anyone opposed? Thank you. The motion has passed. Thanks, Robin. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move down to item 7.5, which is the tree preservation bylaw. We do have a quick little PowerPoint, and I believe there she is. Anna Kalnina is going to walk us through a PowerPoint, and this is a report that's just at this point an update being received, being mostly received for information. So go ahead, Anna. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Is there a presentation that, perfect. Thank you so much. I'm here to speak to you to the recent provincial and municipal direction with respect to tree preservation and how in Planning Division we've responded to the new requirements. In this presentation, I'll speak to the city's responsibilities under Bill 68 as it relates to tree canopy policy. I will provide examples how other municipalities have complied with Bill 68 and what existing and forthcoming documents support the city's compliance. Next slide, please. It goes without saying that trees provide a number of ecological services, social benefits, and aesthetic value. To benefit from these tree services, it is therefore important that we protect and enhance the tree canopy and natural vegetation in the city, and this is the intent of Bill 68. It is an amendment to the Municipal Act that came into effect in March 2019. The bill requires all municipalities to adopt and maintain policies to protect and enhance tree canopy and natural vegetation. The amendment only provides that we have to have policies, but not what kind, and that these policies shall not only protect, but also enhance tree canopy and vegetation. This is a rather broad requirement. From our research of what other municipalities are doing, we've come to understand and appreciate that Bill 68 compliance is not a one-size-fits-all. What I mean by that is that our municipalities have the flexibility to determine how to amend current policies or regulations, or implement new tools to comply with Bill 68. And because Bill 68 requires that we adopt and maintain these policies, compliance would progress with the evolution of our municipal tools. Next slide, please. I've summarized what other municipalities have generally done, which is review existing tools for protecting and enhancing canopy and natural vegetation, and identify if there are any gaps. Municipalities very often rely on their official plan policies that consider urban tree canopy and natural heritage features for compliance, and in some cases have passed bylaws that confirm that their policies and their official plans address Bill 68 requirements. One of the most obvious tools is protecting trees is the tree preservation bylaw, or also known as tree cutting bylaws. Many municipalities have forestry master plans or urban forest strategies that provide direction for protecting and enhancing forest or urban canopy into the future. There may also be municipal programs that provide incentives to landowners as it relates to purchasing trees or planting trees. And last but not least, natural heritage studies similarly identify and protect forested and vegetated areas to be protected, which are often relied on for compliance with Bill 68, especially in predominantly rural municipalities. Next slide. Now, the city already has a number of plans, policies, and guidelines and programs that support tree canopy and natural vegetation. I want to highlight in this list our new strategic plan that identifies healthy environment as one of the 4 strategic priority areas for the city, and as part of that, it directs us to protect and preserve natural areas by protecting and enhancing tree canopy. There are many other documents in this list that I will note, primarily focus on the importance of trees and natural heritage and strive to protect these features. Next slide. The City of Kawartha Lakes has a few initiatives that cumulatively would further support protection of tree canopy and natural vegetation, but these initiatives are not in effect at this time, but are still noteworthy, like the Official Plan Amendment 13 and secondary plans, which would focus on the trees and vegetation in our urban areas. But these documents continue to be subject to appeals, which is actually why Lee Berry, my supervisor and also co-author of this report, is not able to join me in this presentation as she's participating in the hearing related to these matters. Kawartha's Naturally Connected Natural Heritage System is a heritage system that was developed by various stakeholders for this region. Although the system is not being used in our planning documents at this time, we will be approaching the province with our intent to use this system in our upcoming official plan review, which will have the effect of protecting natural heritage in the city. Then there's also Community Design Manual. This document would have the opportunity to strengthen vegetation requirements for new development proposals, and Tree Preservation Bylaw is a forthcoming tool. There has been some initial work undertaken with respect to the Tree Preservation Bylaw, which I will go over in the next slide. Slide, please. For context, in spring 2019, which is when Bill 68 came out into the effect, then in summer 2019, Kawartha Lakes Environmental Advisory Committee identified tree preservation on their work plan, and planning staff started a review of tree preservation practices or bylaws in other municipalities. We've also found some intersects between our work and the lake management implementation that Kawartha Conservation was undertaken at that time and partnered with their staff to do a shoreline study that identified for us which municipalities have bylaws that protect shoreline trees. This research phase continued well into the fall 2019, where we spoke with select municipalities about their implementation practices. We also spoke with select departments in the city here to better understand challenges in developing and implementing a tree bylaw in the city. Once again, this was an initial reconnaissance with what other municipalities are doing and how we compare. That said, once there's something more concrete in place, there will be broader consultation with all of the affected city divisions. And of course, this would require extensive public consultation throughout different phases of development of the bylaw. But I'll get into that in just a minute. Lastly, we summarized our initial findings with respect to Bill 68 and tree preservation bylaw for the senior management team in the fall of 2020, where we were directed to present in this venue. Next slide, please. Now, I talked a lot about what policies and tools the city already has that are protecting tree canopy and natural vegetation. There are a number of initiatives that the city could consider to ensure that we're really enhancing the tree canopy. This may include strengthening our policies related to the use of trees and vegetation to mitigate stormwater runoff, what is referred to as low impact development and green infrastructure requirements. We could also improve our general planning policies to ensure that we're not only protecting, but also enhancing natural heritage and tree canopy through development process. Many municipalities, as I have mentioned, have established forestry master plans and through which they've established targets for canopies. It is advisable to establish such targets to quantify our protection practices and to guide our policies and bylaws. And there are a number of great incentive initiatives that municipalities across Canada implement, often with the help of partners such as tree planting events and or subsidized tree sales to increase tree coverage in the cities. These are all great initiatives, and if we choose to pursue them, but at this time, there's a need to consult with the public to better identify the need for the community and to have an educational campaign to further scope tools such as the tree preservation bylaw. And that's what we're recommending here today. We're looking to commence a formal public consultation strategy and education plan. We would connect with communication staff to launch a public campaign on Jump-In platform that may include public questionnaires, virtual open houses, and a venue to provide educational resources on tree preservation practices. And following that, we would deliver an options update report based on our findings in about 6 months' time. Thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Kalnina. Appreciate it. Any questions for Anna while we have her on the line? Councillor Yeo, go ahead.
Thank you, and through you, I understand through the report and what you just said that, and let me, if I'm correct, we're already satisfying the bill with what we're doing or what's in the process of being done. And so the public consultation is more to see what we can do to enhance it.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. For sure, it is all up to the municipality's discretion in how we determine what is compliance in the city. Now, we have a number of documents that check the mark in terms of protection, and in a few documents like our strategic plan and also healthy environment, we also identify enhancement requirements. So from that perspective, you could say that we're satisfying the Bill 68 requirements, but of course there's more tools that, as I mentioned, we could be doing when we compare ourselves to other municipalities.
Okay, and then that's good, because I do believe in public consultation, but I also believe in the almighty dollar. So I have no problem doing the public consultation, see what comes out after that as to whether we spend more money. So thank you for the report.
Thank you. Any further questions for Ms. Kalnina? Councillor Vale, go ahead.
No question. I'll give you a motion to move it as printed.
Okay, I'll just ask if that report, Plan 2021-001, and the tree preservation and the presentation be received. If we can just amend the motion And then that council direct staff to commence a formal public consultation strategy and education plan and deliver an options update report to council within 6 months, and that this recommendation be brought forward to council for consideration at the next meeting. Moved by Councillor Vale, second by Councillor Yeo. Sorry, you had a question instead?
Yeah, just one question.
Just let me get a seconder, Councillor Yeo. Let me get a seconder and then I'll get your question.
I'll second it.
You'll second it? Thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah. So my question is in the timing, because the public consultation is gonna be hard to start right now. So do we have to amend it to start the public consultation as COVID permits, or will staff just do it when they're able to?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. This timeframe of 6 months was something that was directed to us during COVID. Now, it wasn't during the lockdown and the state of emergency. So I believe that there are opportunities with respect to more digital consultation, and that's what we've sort of outlined in the report, that it would be all virtually conducted consultation.
And I'll assume,
that's fine.
I'll assume if that timeline needs to be extended, then you'll bring it back to council for an update. So thank you for that. Any further questions on the report? We have a mover and a seconder. I'll call the question. All in favor? Thank you. Anyone opposed? Thank you. The motion is passed. Thank you, Ms. Kalnina. Appreciate it. Okay, we'll move down to item 7.6, which is the Ontario Heritage Act processes. We'll get a quick update. I think this is pretty straightforward. I believe it's something that we already do. They're just adding it to the Ontario, following our lead for a change. So I'll get Emily to give us a quick update to see if we're on track here, and we'll go from there. Go ahead, Emily.
Hi, thanks, Mr. Mayor. So I'll just give you the brief overview of the report today. So this deals with some changes that were made to the Ontario Heritage Act in 2019. So those were made through the More Homes, More Choice Act, and they were intended to come into effect on January 1st of this year. And I say intended because that had been the direction from the province. And about 10 minutes ago, I received an email from our provincial ministry saying that those changes had been delayed until later this year. So we'll have a look at the processes now. They're going to come into effect probably in the next couple of months, but it doesn't hurt to go through them now. So there's two things that I brought to your attention. The first is with regard to the process for making changes to heritage properties. So at the moment, we have a delegated authority bylaw where most changes to heritage properties are reviewed and approved by staff and the Municipal Heritage Committee, and only those that involve the demolition of a heritage property would come to council. Now, they've now changed the definition of demolish, so that includes both the full demolition of a property as well as the removal of heritage attributes from the property. So we don't really have an interpretation from that on the province, and hopefully we'll have some more guidance on that over the next few months. But I just wanted to bring this to council's attention in case we do get an application that is looking to do that kind of work, where generally it would be reviewed by staff in the Heritage Committee. It may end up coming to council instead. The second is with regard to listing properties on the Heritage Register. So under the Heritage Act previously, there was no requirement for notifying owners, and there was no objection process. The changes are now putting in place a formal objection process, which provides some clarity, I think, for staff and also for property owners, for property owners who have issues with the listing, and it also puts into effect a formal notification. So the Act is asking us to provide notification after council lists a property. Previous to now, Kawartha Lakes, we've notified owners prior to listing their properties. And the reason we do that is to provide an opportunity for dialogue and for some education for people to ask questions about the listing process. Personally, I find it very effective in terms of communicating with members of the public and providing transparency. So what the recommendations in this report are asking for is for some council direction on that notification process. Staff's preference on that would be to do as the province is asking us to do and provide that notification afterwards, but also to continue what we're currently doing and send a notification before. So effectively, a property owner whose property was proposed for listing would get 2 notices, a courtesy notice prior to listing, as we currently do, and a statutory notice afterwards, which would be new. I think that will be very good in terms of communication with our property owners. And I know that as a property owner, I personally would prefer to receive a notice ahead of time as well, just because it's a little bit more friendly and open. So yeah, that's the Coles notes of the report for today.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Turner? Councillor or Deputy Mayor O'Reilly, go ahead.
Can you hear me now, Andy?
We can hear you. Yep, don't touch anything.
Through to you, Emily. I know there's a couple potential proposals, not directly in the downtown, but close to the downtown, where they're talking about buying 2 or 3 existing buildings and demolish them to make much made for like the proposal what the Grand was at one time. So I guess the best thing would be for having me to put them in touch with you to make sure that they're not in the Heritage District or whatever else the procedure they should go through.
Yeah, that would be the best thing to do for those sorts of properties. And I'm not sure what they are, so I can't give you any more direct comments on that. So it's best if they just touch base.
Thank you.
Councillor Ashmore, you had a question? Go ahead. You're still on mute. You're still on mute, Ron. You need to take your mute off. Yep.
Okay, so when we talked about this at the committee, just reiterating what Emily said, 2 words: transparency, and giving people the courtesy of knowing that their property may be listed on that register. Is that right, Emily? And
that's right.
I think it's great because it gives people an opportunity to approve or object to them having that property on the list. So we're being out front about this, and I think it's a great move that we did as a committee, and Emily supported that. So hope you support this.
Well, you're our rep on the committee, Councillor.
Yeah.
You're our rep on the committee, so would you move the recommendation as printed?
I'll move that.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Ashmore, second. Councillor Yeo, thank you. Any further questions for Emily? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Thank you. Anyone opposed? Thank you. Motion has passed. Thank you, Ms. Turner. Have a good day. Thanks. Our next report, 7.7, the fire plan, will move to the end of the agenda as we adjusted our approved agenda. So we'll go to 7.8, temporary support for the Finland Falls Bridge. I believe our director, Juan Rojas, is going to give us a quick update on what came about. There he is. Welcome, sir. If you want to give us a quick update on this report, we'll see what we can do. Go ahead.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So as council is aware, we do an inspection of our bridges every 2 years. So the last inspection we did was in 2018, 2019, that identified some concerns with the Finland Bridge, and more investigation was required. We then budgeted in 2019 a full rehab of the bridge. We awarded that design to DM Wills, and during that investigation of the full rehab, we found 2 joints that needed repair relatively quickly. So there is no risk of the bridge collapsing, but we're being proactive in order to support these structures. We then moved to a competitive procurement process. We actually invited 4 contractors to bid. The report only lists 2 because the other 2 were no bids, but 4 were invited. And now we're bringing this report forward for council to fund. So we recommend that the funds come through the uncommitted portion of the capital contingency reserve, which is what it's intended for. It's intended for these types of repair. So that's staff's recommendation. The construction should start by the end of this month and take approximately 4 to 6 weeks to complete. So the contractor, Clearwater, has already applied for a road occupancy permit, and that's well under process. That's it.
Okay, thanks, Juan. Will you move that recommendation, Councillor Elmsley? Yes, you'll move by Councillor Elmsley. Can I get a seconder? We'll see if there's any questions. Councillor Seymour Fagan, thank you. Councillor Elmsley, you had a question? Go ahead.
Yeah, through you to Mr. Rojas. When they do the work on this bridge, how disruptive is it going to be to traffic?
Thank you through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor. So the majority, 95% of the work is underneath. So we anticipate no disruption, with the exception of when they have to move the crane from one side to the other. So during that time, it will flag traffic, but we anticipate that only takes an hour and a half at most. So when they have to cross the street, yes. Otherwise, the rest of the work is underneath the bridge.
Thank you. And is it going to be down to one lane for that period of time, or will it be 2 lanes?
So when they have to move equipment from one side to the other, they'll just flag it. They most likely will go down to 1 lane and go through. Again, if it's only 15 minutes, they'll just halt traffic. But you know, they'll use common sense. We have DM Wills on as contracted men and inspectors. Staff will be also overseeing the project. So if there is an extended delay, I'll make sure to inform council and Public Works.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions on the report? Okay, we have a mover and a seconder. I'll call the question. All in favor? Thank you. Anyone opposed? Thank you. Motion has passed. Thank you, Director. We'll go down to memorandums, which is 8.1, memorandum regarding the waiving of the encroachment fee for the Woodville Lions Club. Councillor Vail declared a conflict on this one, so he won't participate in the conversation, if any. It is a memo from myself. It's pretty self-explanatory. This group fundraises. It is a city-supported project. They followed the process. They got locates. They worked with Public Works on a location and realty services. And staff do not, it's a big win for the community, and the data is being used by the OPP. Staff do not have the authority to waive the bylaw. It's $125 per year. And as I mentioned, it's pretty straightforward. So unless there's any questions, move by, do you have a question? Or you'll move the recommendation, Councillor Richardson? Move the motion. Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Elmsley. And questions? Any questions on the memo? Seeing none, I'll call. Do you have a question, Councillor Richardson?
Yeah, I just kind of want to just ask this question out loud. I know I've done some investigation regarding the cost of these for communities. And if I believe that it's pretty close to between $5,000 and $8,000 for one of these signs. And for this community group to do this for the community, they should be applauded. And I think us doing this is a good partnership.
Thank you. Agree. It's a great win for the community, and the Woodville Lions Clubs does a good job. Even with Councillor Vail being on there, they still do a good job. So. We have the motion. I'll call the question. All in favor? Thank you. Anyone opposed? Thank you. Motion has passed. Item 8.2 is a memorandum regarding the improved lighting at Heron's Landing entrance. Motion by Councillor Ashmore. That the memo be received, that staff conduct a traffic count in summer and provide statistical analysis of entrance regarding traffic and safety to see if warranted for streetlight, and that staff report back in Q3 2021, and that this recommendation be forwarded to Council. Councillor Ashmore, I assume you'll move that?
Yes, please, yeah.
Thank you. Second by Councillor Yeo. Councillor Ashmore, do you want to speak to it? It's pretty straightforward, but go ahead.
Yeah, pretty straightforward. The folks there were just asking for just some better lighting of some sort. And here's a beautiful four-page written letter that I got before Christmas, and I won't go into that, but just sort of the details of what people have to endure. They've been, this particular subdivision's been there since 2007. It's a 4-season subdivision, Park Ridge subdivision, so people are living there year round, and they're finding it very dangerous, not just turning in, like driving their vehicles, but even walking at night. So it's a safety thing, and I appreciate your support just for staff to study this, please.
Yeah, no, I think it's good. They'll do the warrant, they'll come back to council, and then council can make a decision on where to go from there. So any further questions? I'll call the question. All in favor? Thank you. Anyone opposed? Motion has passed. Thank you. Next memo is 8.3, a memorandum regarding the Omimi Beach Park splash pad. That the memo from Councillor Ashmore regarding the splash pad be received, that staff develop a plan consistent with past community partnerships for the infrastructure with costing to establish a splash pad in Omimi, and that staff report back in Q2 2021, and that this recommendation be brought forward to council for consideration. I assume again, Councillor Ashmore, you'll move that your memo?
Yes, please.
Thank you. And a second? Got a seconder? Councillor Dunn? Thank you. Do you want to speak to it, Councillor Ashmore?
Sure, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Omimi being the 4th largest community in the city of Kawartha Lakes, there's a demand for this type of recreational facility. I've had people get in touch with me, young families, service clubs, individuals, businesses, and they really want to partner with the city to see if we can get this project underway in the next year or so. So we're just looking for support, and the community's going to step up in this project, and that's the main thing. Like, we're going to get really good community support, and I'd appreciate your support here just to kickstart this whole project. So
thank you. We just got a couple questions. So Councillor Helmsley, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm curious to know what it means when we say that we want to look at a partnership for infrastructure with costing. And the reason I'm asking the question is, I think several other splash pads in the city were funded fully by the communities with no municipal input other than doing it on municipal land. And I'm wanting to know if that will be the case here, or whether it's expected that there will be some kind of a partnership where the municipality is expected to put in money.
I can verify, Councillor, that we had the conversation with Director Shanks, and that information will get flushed out in the report when it comes back. You're absolutely correct. Some of the community groups have fundraised for the whole amount, and consistent with past community partnerships with the land, I mean, that's exactly what we're trying to flesh out in the report. I know there's some water issues in Omimi as well regarding quantity of water, so that'll all come back in the report. We'll have all the information, and then we can decide where we want to go from there. So I did run it by him before, and he's comfortable with the direction here that he can bring the proper information forward for an informed decision. Okay. Councillor Vail, you had a question?
Yeah, my question was just, I'm just wondering why we're going about it this way. In the past, when these projects have come forward, the proposal has come to us, not staff doing the costing and staff doing the project. It's been the community organization that's come forward and said, this is the project we'd like to do. This is what it looks like. This is the area that we need a partnership in. So I'm just wondering why we're not following the same process we have in the past.
Well, again, I spoke with, and I'll just answer here, Ron. We did speak with Director Shanks, and I think that is the intent of the report that'll come back, Councillor Vail. you know, the group in Omimi's looking, how do we get this in front of council? How do we start the process? And there was a bit of a conversation around that. So it's not staff doing all the work. It's really just staff bringing back the information of how it's worked in the past with other community groups. And if there's any issues in Omimi, for instance, with water, and then council can decide at that point. But I know Councillor Ashmore was struggling on, you know, how do I get this in front of council? How do we get the community sort of kick-started with the interest for a splash pad? And this wording we thought was best to just sort of get that process into the queue. And when it comes back, we can have a discussion about where to go from there. So I think we're talking the same thing. It might not be worded perfectly, but if anything needs to change, we have from now to council to fine tune the wording. But I think we're talking the same thing. Okay. I'll take that as a okay, or he doesn't want to talk to me anymore.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Councillor Ashmore.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, like we're taking, the people there are taking the initiative. They're the ones that are spearheading this, and I'm certainly helping them. We're not asking to be for more and more handouts. Let's look at some other examples. There's, I think, pretty well every splash pad, I would say, Boys and Girls Club, the Logie Street Park splash pad. There was a lot of public support in that, and we're trying to get as much private and business support as we can. We're trying to get as much as we can. If we can get help from the city, that's great. So we're not trying to be you know, an outcost or something like that, or something negative to the city. Like we're not asking for the majority of the money to come from the taxpayers. We're partnering with, we're doing what we're told to do. You know, we want to do a project, so this is what I've been asked to do, and what the people are cooperating, and they just like to see this community feel like they're included. You know, we are the 4th largest community in the city of Kawartha Lakes, and I think that people there have worked really hard. The businesses, the individuals are really wanting to chip in, and they would really love to see this project completed.
Yep, and I think this memo will start that process. Councillor Yeo, go ahead.
Yeah, and sorry for having to speak through you, Mr. Mayor, but it's killing me to see a councillor having to sit here and justify why he thinks his community needs something like a splash pad with buy-in. We have so many instances of totally funded projects going on in the millions of dollars right now with no community input at all financially. So Ron, sit back and get your report back and bring it back to council, because there's no reason why you should be sitting there justifying why you're asking for something for your community. And sorry, that's my soapbox for the day, but thank you for the moment.
Thank you. Councillor Vail, you had a question, another follow-up?
Oh, I was just going to say, I'm not opposed to it or anything. I'm just simply asking the question why it's different than the others. That was all.
No, I think we're all talking the same page. Let's get the information back, and then we can have a more of an informed discussion on what it will take to make this happen if we choose to go that direction. So any further questions? I'm going to call the question. All in favor? Thank you. Anyone opposed? Motion is passed. Thank you. Item 8.4 is a memo from Councillor Vail, that the memo from Councillor Vail regarding the purchasing policy amendment be received, that the policy be brought forward, and I'm just recommending we add Councillor Vail as part of the policy review, so that all substantiated costs associated with each project are described before budgets are approved, and that this recommendation be brought forward to council for consideration at the next meeting. I assume you'll move that, Councillor Vail? Okay, we'll get a seconder, Councillor Seymour Fagan. Do you want to speak to it, Councillor Vail?
Sure, just quickly. I think the memo is pretty self-explanatory. We've seen a lot of building projects this term and some past terms or whatever that we find down the road through the middle of the project that we're coming back and being asked for approvals for things such as furniture and everything, where we thought we were approving cost in or everything costed out. But when those reports come to us, most times there is no costing breakdown, right? It's, I use the Mariposa Fire Hall that's being built right now. When that came for approval to budget, it was just simply asking for a number, right? And we approved a number, right? But we have no idea what the actual breakdown, what was included, what's not included. And I think in fairness to council, I think they should see that, or we should see that before we approve these things. And then instead of, coming later or in a subsequent budget period, asking for more money for something that we thought or we assumed was part of the project. And if we approve something, seeing that stuff and we miss something, well, that's on us, right? But right now, I think there should be a little bit more disclosure and transparency when this stuff is coming forward.
No, I agree. I think it's a good, it'll help clarify some stuff. So thank you for that. Any further questions or comments on the memo? I'll call the question then. All in favor? Thank you. Anyone opposed? That motion is passed. Next memo is again from Councillor Vail, that the memorandum from Councillor Vail regarding combining the Kirkfield Medical Centre and library be received, that staff be directed to investigate options and costs for combining the Kirkfield Medical Centre and library together in one building, and that a report come back in Q3 of 2021. I'm just adding that part. We didn't have a timeline in there, but I checked with staff. They're good with that if you are, and that this recommendation be brought forward to council for consideration at the next regular council meeting. Councillor Vail, will you move that?
Yep.
Thank you. And second, Councillor Yeo, thank you. Councillor Vail, you want to speak to it briefly? Go ahead.
Sure, just quickly, same thing. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. We touched on it a couple of meetings ago when money was asked for the Kirkfield Medical Center, and the demolition of the current nurse practitioner building came up in Kirkfield. And I think on a go-forward basis in some of these smaller communities, I think it's the way to go is to build more of these community hubs or have one facility that houses multiple city services for those communities rather than having multiple buildings.
Yeah, agree. Thank you. Councillor Yeo, go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to thank Andrew for bringing this to me and then bringing it to council, and I appreciate the effort, and I look forward to the report. Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you. Any further comments or questions? I'll call the question then. All in favor? Thank you. Anyone opposed? Thank you. Motion is passed. 8.6 is a memo from Councillor Vail. He's been busy. We must have gave him some time off on the holidays there. That the memo from Councillor Vail regarding a review of service levels by the CAO be received, that the CAO review service levels in light of operational changes and changing service demands, recommend efficiencies and service enhancements, and report back in Q2 2021, and that this recommendation be brought forward to council for consideration at the next regular council meeting. Moved by Councillor Vail. Can I get a seconder? And then Councillor Elmsley, thank you. Councillor Vail, go ahead.
Thanks. I'd just like to bring this forward because I'm curious more than anything to see some areas of opportunity or some areas where we could save on a go forward basis. And I think down the road, maybe it's not a bad idea for the CAO to report on this on a regular basis of where there's areas of opportunity, right? These things never seem to come up until there's an issue, and then staff agrees that a policy or something isn't working or it could be done a better way, but it never seems to come to light without some asking or some pushing. So I just like to see what's available and what council could do if council chose to do something or make some changes.
No, and I'll just say that I thank you for bringing it forward because I think with the timing with what's going on right now, your timing is good. It's a good opportunity to have a look at that. Councillor Elmsley, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I think along the same lines, that, you know, with the pandemic, COVID shutdown, all those things, we've had to do our business in a different manner. And probably some of the things that we are doing as a result of that may be things we want to incorporate permanently, because they'll be more efficient and there will be potentially some savings to them. So I think it's a good idea to have a look at them and look at any changes that we've been forced to make. So I'm happy to support it.
Yeah, agree. Thank you. Councillor Ashmore, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have a couple of questions. I'm not sure who can answer for me, but was this not done at the previous council when they had the core services review? And also we have two dedicated staff members that run the Office of Strategy Management, and they look after the city and finding various places where they can save money and be more efficient. And thirdly, like what services are we looking at discontinuing here? Like, can we be more specific? Are we talking about closing libraries? Are we talking about closing service centers? We've already closed one community center. Like, what's next on the list here? Because first of all, I don't know why we're duplicating the work here. We've already done this, have we not? And not that long ago, the previous council.
I'll just say I don't think we're contemplating closing anything. I think we're just looking for a report back on some of the changes that were made, but I'll let Councillor Vail speak to it. It's his memo and what he's trying to flesh out here. Go ahead, Andrew.
Yep, it's just simply processes and things have changed during COVID, and we're doing things a different way or whatever. And some of the stuff is tied to policies that may or may not be able to change. I'm not talking about opening anything. I'm not talking about closing anything. I'm simply asking, where are some areas of opportunity that have been found or could be found as a result of this that haven't been brought forward to us and won't be brought forward unless we ask for it.
Okay. You good with that, Councillor Ashmore? Don't get ahead of it. We're not looking to close anything.
Yeah, I'm just kind of, I don't understand, because like I'm okay with it, but I mean, do we not have dedicated staff people that are always combing through everything? The Office of Strategy Management to look for efficiencies? Like, this is two full-time positions that we have, staff members that do a great job, and they save us up to $6 million, the last report I saw. And when we're saying that we're going to approve this new study, I mean, why aren't we listening to the advice of those particular staff members who are doing this already? And it was done previously with the previous council. I know it was a previous council, but that was quite an exhaustive, intensive, extensive, detailed study, that core services review, and it involved not just the staff, but the community members too. So I'm just not sure what else we can, make staff do more work doing this when we're supposed to be concentrating on the pandemic, and we're going to be asking staff to be doing more work, and the staff are already doing that. That's just my opinion, but.
No, fair enough. We've made some changes as a result of the pandemic, and I think what we're looking to do is say, are some of these changes for the better that we might not have done, and are they changes that should continue or shouldn't continue, and let's have a look at it. And anytime we can take a minute to try and find more efficiencies in our operations, I think we'd be negligent if we didn't take a look and see if there's things that we found that we can move forward with. Councillor Dunn, go ahead.
Yeah, just some follow-up on your remarks, Mr. Mayor. We should never, ever, ever stop looking. And just because we have two dedicated staff members under normal circumstances, they aren't out there fishing for spots. They're acting on information that's received from somebody else. So, would you please look at this organization and see if we can find some savings? That's all that's all that memo is saying. But they don't walk into Public Works and say, okay, we're going to examine your works for efficiencies. But maybe something like this might just stir the pot up a bit and If there's savings to be had there, fine. If not, it's not a bad exercise. We're asking the CEO to review stuff. He could very well ask that same staff that you're talking about to do the reports. So I think it's a good memo.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? I'm going to call the question. All in favor? Thank you. Anyone opposed? Thank you. Motion is passed. So our last report, let's backtrack to 7.7, which is our master fire plan. I know the chief, there he is. Welcome, Mr. Pankhurst. Chief is on the line. He's going to give us an overview on the master fire plan, and then we'll see if there's any questions or comments going forward. I will stress that this is, and I have talked to the chief about it, this is a master fire plan to be considered as part of future strategic planning. And I want to reiterate that anything in here that is a cost will have to come forward in a future budget for approval as our city grows. So we're not committing to any budget implications as a result of approving this for consideration in this master plan. So I know that question comes up a lot, and I ask it myself a lot, but I just wanted to clarify that right off the bat. So I'll turn it over to the chief, and he can give us an overview, and we'll go from there. Go ahead, sir.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, and good afternoon, Council and everyone. Yeah, so that's a nice little segue into my presentation to you today. So basically, what is a master fire plan? So, you know, we look at it as a strategic blueprint for the fire services, much like the strategic plan for the city and other master plans like the transportation master plan and the parks and recreation master plan. This is a plan for the fire services. And this plan will replace the previous 2009 to 2019 master fire plan. So we basically look at what we're doing today versus where we need to be in the future. And this plan helps us map out how we will get there. And I think, you know, getting back to what the mayor said, I think that one of the biggest questions that always arises is, how much will this cost and how will we pay for this? And just a clarification, the master plan has been received. It's never approved by council, it's just received. And we do bring forward recommendations for each budget year for consideration by council. And I'll speak to that a little bit further as well. So basically, the financing of this plan will be based on the growth and development and increased tax base. Really, you know, it really relies on what's going to happen over the next several years within the city of Kawartha Lakes. And a lot of the key things, you know, will be, you know, we have an area rating system. There's the Lindsay Ops area and then our rural area. So a lot of these, you know, especially the key positions will be generally rated so that the benefit of all the taxpayers will receive those added services and or the benefit of those positions. So one thing to keep in mind. So basically, when growth and development and the tax base increases, recommendations based on each priority will be brought forward to council during the budget process for the applicable year for consideration and approval. And I think one of the questions in discussion with the mayor the other day was, you know, like what are the triggers that dictate when these things come forward? Well, to be quite honest, you know, we really need a lot of these things right now, but it's not affordable. We have to wait for, you know, these new larger subdivisions to come online, for these new commercial developments to come online to increase our tax base, and then proportionately, the appropriate amount of taxes will be collected and allocated to not just fire service, but all services across the city based on, you know, those added pressures and added needs to deliver those services to those new areas. So, and I'd also like to point out that the company who prepares the plan, they make recommendations based on risk, industry standards, and best practices. So they're arm's length from the fire services. And we'll talk a little bit more about the aerial device that's in there. And I know that that's been a contentious issue in the past, and that'll kind of hopefully all round that out. So one of the other big areas always in the master fire plan is full-time staffing requirements. They always seem to generate many questions and concerns because we know full-time equivalents are expensive. So as part of the past city core services review, it was identified then that compared to our comparator municipalities, we are understaffed at the supervisory and management levels in some areas, not at the deputy chief or the fire chief level, but in the divisions. You know, many comparable sized departments have several members in the training division, several members in the fire prevention division. They have a number of district chiefs and or platoon chiefs that are an extension of management that carry out those supervisory roles. For our overall supervisory and management kind of span of control, it's we're very short-staffed in that area. So several positions have already been included in the city's long-term staffing plan that we had brought forward in the past years, with the exception of an additional training officer that was identified in this master fire plan. As you know, we were fortunate enough to have a full-time training officer approved a couple of years ago, but the consultants have seen the need, and this is in addition to our staffing plan that we had put forward, that a need for an additional training officer. And when I look at, again, getting back to some of our comparator municipalities, there's usually several people within training divisions for fire service of our side. So basically, some of the staffing requirements that have been identified in the past are an emergency planner. And I think it was last year, I know there was no new positions for 2021 moving forward, but for 2020, you know, I think in part of our business case, with climate change leading to regular annual flooding, wildland fires, and unusual pandemics. So this was like a year ago, I was before council talking about this, and sure enough, we have that, we're in the midst of a worldwide unusual pandemic. You know, this position is even more critical today. So, you know, next year, we know we're on a hiatus, but that'll be the #1 position for the 2022 budget moving forward from our staffing, long-term staffing plan. We need an additional fire prevention inspector. We need an additional platoon chief or district chief, and we need an additional 4 full-time firefighters here for the Lindsay division. So again, it's not going to happen overnight. You know, this is a 7 to 10 year plan, and again, it'll all be based on growth and development. So as stated earlier, staffing recommendations will be brought forward for consideration by council when affordable and based on growth and development. And as I just kind of mentioned just briefly, I know a second aerial truck is likely being questioned by council. And if you recall, it was my recommendation to purchase a second aerial based on risk. However, this was not approved. And that's fine. But the MFP consultant identified not having 2 aerials as a risk and has recommended a more affordable option for a multi-purpose pumper aerial truck. And we've already been having some discussions here. It would be my recommendation when we replace the Finland pumper, and it's a 2008, so it's about 13 years old. We add some additional funds to this purchase and purchase a Quint or a lighter aerial truck. So what would happen is a pumper is running around $600,000. A multi-purpose lighter duty aerial is around $1 million. So you would ask, we'd approach council that year for, we'd move forward the recommendation to go to a Quint, which is a multi-purpose. It's basically a pumper with an aluminum ladder on top. So it would fill the role as a pumper in that division, but also give us that second aerial device, which from time to time is greatly needed to reduce the risk within the community. So really add, you know, I'm just going by some loose numbers today, approximately $400,000 to a $600,000 purchase. Now we're back into having a second aerial for the city. It would, you know, quickly be able to respond across County Road 8 over to Bobcaygeon. It could serve Finland Falls, and it could quickly get down to Lindsay or any of the other built up kind of little urban areas within our little town areas, rural development areas, I should say. So just you know, just a different way of doing business, a multi-purpose, multifunctional vehicle at a more affordable cost. So you'll probably see that coming forward in the next couple of years. I don't have an exact date. One of our when we're laying out our business plans for the year or our work plans for the year, we're going to be looking at our fleet requirements. So then what we would do is, as an example, just a little sidebar, the new pumper that's in the budget for this year, it's or that we're working on for the current year, or sorry, 2020. It'll go to Lindsay The Lindsay truck will go to Emily. The Emily truck will go out to an outlying station. That's kind of how we repurpose our trucks within the fleet until they're end of life. So the Finland pumper would go to a less busy haul, and that would extend its service life right out till the 20 years. So it's just really kind of an efficient way of maximizing the use and the lifespan of our vehicles. So basically just kind of to wrap it up for my part, and of course open it up to any questions, is the master plan should move us through the next 7 to 10 years. We'll likely do a review and report the progress at the year 5 mark, and report back our successes to date. And I'd just like to add, our last master fire plan, we were very successful with that. I think, there was just a few things, and they were really around the full-time staffing components that weren't fulfilled or moved forward. And it was just really related to growth and development, and then increased tax growth. But all the other things, we were very successful with the Pontypool, the Bethany, the Mariposa Fire Hall build, the training officer, a bunch of other key programs, standardizing the fleet water shuttle accreditation or dry hydrant program. So those are just some examples. This is a refresher to council of some of the recommendations that were brought forward each year and approved as part of the budget, and that we were very successful in moving forward with. So at this time, I'll take any further questions regarding any of the recommendations or the master fire plan. Thank you.
Thanks, Chief. Councillor Dunn, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've just got to get my screen back up with that on it. There's just I'm going to start off with a comment. Every time since I've been on council, certainly in my first couple of years, every time I had an objection or a question about an expenditure at the fire department, well, you approved it when you approved the master fire plan. So I'm a little cautious about approving plans if I'm going to get flogged by them every time I turn around. So just a couple of questions. Item number 4, it's recommended that a master of emergency management position be created that will oversee emergency planning and preparation. If you want someone to develop a plan, why do we have to have a full-time manager that's going to be with us for 30 years? Is there not a potential to contract that job out and then have one of our other currently existing chiefs oversee it? And if 10 years down the road or 5 years down the road, it's got to be revisited. I'm just nervous about having somebody there whose job is to develop a plan and then be there forever after that plan's developed. So I'm looking for comments on that.
Sure, and thank you, Councillor Dunn. That's a great question. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to council. So, we do have an overall plan. We are in compliance with the requirements under the Emergency Management and Civil Protection Act each year. We get our compliance letter, but that's not really digging down into what the real needs are. There's certain requirements that we have to fulfill to meet that certification. What we've been doing now, and this is just an example, our strategy group, Denise Williams, has been working on business continuity plans along with fire services. It was Brian Robinson was the sponsor of that program as part of our pandemic continuity recovery. So what that does is it looks at each department and the good government services that they need to continue to provide during an emergency that affect the health and safety of the residents. So a lot of good work has been done, and we're going to marry that into our overall plan. But this needs to be something that has the attention of a full-time staff person day in, day out on a moving forward basis, so we don't get stuck. I mean, because another crisis is going to come. We've seen them, we've had SARS, we've had Ebola, we had the blackout, now we have the pandemic. These things happen from time to time. We have our annual flooding here within the city. It's one of those programs that can't be managed on the side of our desk, because that's basically what we do. It needs the dedication of a full-time staffer to keep the attention on these business continuity plans that will help each department continue to to provide the services that they're providing. We're doing a great job overall as the city, all the city divisions and departments. A lot of good work has been happening as a result of these continuity plans that have been made. But unfortunately, a lot of these plans have been made on the fly. And we want to get away from making these plans on the fly so that there's an actual office that manages that, so that the next challenge that comes along, we won't even miss a beat, and we'll just be able to continue and even be able to provide just as good or better services the next time around. So that's basically in a nutshell. I understand where council comes from, because these positions are quite expensive. And somebody, it could be on the books for quite a period of time. But based on the risk, it's always been our position. And again, the consultant, they saw it as a risk as well. And at the end of the day, we move forward the recommendation each time at budget time, and it's up to council to decide if they want to approve that recommendation or not.
So, and I understand what you're saying, but so I have two problems. Number one, I bring a fresh perspective to a particular given task, and I solve the problem. I come up with a plan, and I'm getting stale after a while. After I've done that job for 3 or 4 or 5 years, I pretty much laid everything that's in the back of my mind on the table. So what keeps the position fresh? What keeps it regenerating new and better ideas? So that's my primary, or my first question. My second question is, because you talk a lot about the side of the desk jobs, what's on the side of the desk for this guy or this person? Because I have a hard time imagining that 2,020 hours a year is going to be spent by emergency planning, and we're going to do that forever. So what are we going to do so I'm going to get some sort of return on my investment if I enter this position?
Well, sometimes it's hard to quantify, those types of positions. It's really more of a qualitative that we're doing all the best things that we can to continue to provide good government services for the community. I guess you could quantify it by, it is reducing the risk for our from any type of action that could come against the city. I don't know what that would be. As I said, it is hard to qualify and quantify, but more so quantify. But it's just I look at again our comparator municipalities, the city of Peterborough. They have 3 people in that division. I'm not saying that that's the right number, but they seem to have they're on the right track for being on top and engaged with all their divisions and departments and ready for the challenges that face that.
Okay,
community.
Chief, thank you for that answer.
Yep.
With the mayor's permission, I've got 2 more that won't be as long, so I'm going to move on. We got to come up with a better name. I'm talking about item 6. We got to come up with a better name. It's like, I understand that a platoon chief's not really a chief. He's, but we got to come up with better names, because every time I deal with it in a public setting, the response I get, well, look at all the darn chiefs you got kicking around. You got platoon chiefs, district chiefs, deputy chiefs, chiefs of this, chiefs of that. So item number 6, I may not be as opposed to it as I could be if we came up with a better name. And I'm just going to leave that one there for you to think about. My last question is number 17, item number 17. Okay, so this will be an additional aerial truck. So when the one that we currently have wears out, we're still planning on replacing that one. Is that my understanding?
No. The aerial truck that's in service through you, Mr. Mayor, to council. The current aerial truck we have in service is in Lindsay. Goes anywhere in the city as required. It has about 10 years life, 8 to 10 years left on its lifespan. If you recall, or maybe not, it's been a few years now, we had a second aerial. That aerial was replaced from service a few years ago. We always wanted to replace, have a second aerial. So we always have it. The goal is to have a 10-year-old aerial and a new aerial. So then when one aerial hits 20 The second one's around 10, and we phase them out this way. So this addition of the second aerial, it's a more affordable option way of getting a multi-purpose truck that still fulfills the requirements of an aerial when we have to replace the pumper in the
Thank you,
Finland
Chief.
Falls division.
Maybe by the time we have this discussion about it, I won't be on council and maybe you'll be into a deserved retirement. Thank you.
Thank you. So I have
Councillor
Councillor Yeo and Elmsley, but just before that, just to go back as a follow-up on number 4, Chief, who's the manager of emergency management right now? I mean, you're talking about creating a position full-time. Who does that job right now? Because we have emergencies, we seem to muddle our way through them or however we get through them. You're asking for a new position, but who does that job now?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. That's a good question. And I would like to give our staff a little more credit than, I know you're only kidding, but you know, when I say we run it from the side of our desk, it may appear as muddling through, but there is a lot of attention to detail with that portfolio. So through the bylaw, the fire chief, my position, I'm appointed as the community emergency management coordinator. Technically, I'm the one that's responsible to ensure that we have an updated emergency plan and that we're in compliance with the legislation each year. Deputy Chief Raymer, that used to be his portfolio, and since he has retired, Executive Assistant Valerie Knights has been kind enough to, she's a certified community emergency management coordinator as well. She's taken that on with her duties to ensure that we're in compliance each year. So we take a kind of an all hands on approach right now. We all have a role. District Chief Kish looks after flooding, along with Deputy Jones. Deputy Smith will be assisting this year with that. Of course, I'm the liaison with the province and all the things that go on at that level. So through kind of a team approach, feeding into Executive Assistant Knights, we're able to keep the program up and running.
Thank you for that. Councillor Yeo, you had a question? Go ahead, sir.
I do have a couple of comments, and that the chief is more than welcome to comment on my comments. But one concern I had with this report was the growth projections. In the beginning, they talk about the population being 75,000. And then the very next section, they say this whole thing is determined by community growth, which they say will be up to 100,000 by 2031, which they're using an old 2009 growth projector, which said at this point in time, we'd have 91,000 people in the city. So it's a little concerning if we based too much of this whole thing on that kind of growth, considering we haven't met it, and I don't expect we'll meet the growth in the future. That's the first comment. Second comment is I didn't see anything in the plan about lifespan of trucks beyond the 20 years. As we all know, the underwriters will extend the life of a pump or anything up to 10 years if it's maintained well and it passes certification after 20. And it's been told to us in the past. So where's the policy, or where is the maintenance agenda to look after these trucks? So maybe we can stretch these life cycles beyond what they are now. So I guess that is a question there, and feel free to comment on the growth.
Chief, go ahead.
Yes. Yep. Thank you for the question. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to council. You know, the growth projections have been kind of we know that we got this Northwest Trunk area, and there's a lot of other infill areas that for whatever reason have been maybe slow to start moving. So yes, our projection numbers have been maybe hard to really pin down. Same with our, we're supposed to be a provincial growth area. Those numbers all really need to be refreshed. So, as I said, it's hard to pinpoint. However, when each year when we move forward the key positions based on risk, we have to go into the pot with all of other divisions that need key positions as well. And we just determine, okay, fire, we know you need 3, but you're going to get 1. Development services needs 1. Community services needs 1 over here. Public works needs 2. So we have to, without increasing the overall budget, it's what those tax dollars will actually be able to fund is really how we're going to move forward with that. You know, obviously we want to have as much growth as possible. The more tax dollars that come in are great, but I mean, at the same time, the growth has to be measured, and you know, we can't put the cart before the horse. We have to take a measured, balanced approach to up staffing. I wish I had a better answer on pinpointing those growth numbers, but that's just the way it is right now. As far as the trucks go, you know, 20 years has always been the rule of thumb for a pumper. We don't really use the services of the Fire Underwriters Survey. We really use the services of the Fire Protection Survey Services. That's the group that does our water shuttle accreditation. And each division, what we've been able to work with them is that the first run pumper, whether it's the pumper tanker or the pumper, has to be within 20 years. And we're already seeing huge returns from the return on investment from the first tankers that we bought back just after amalgamation. We're going to be able to extend those life cycles or lifespans way out beyond the 20 years. We're looking at least 25 years now, and then we'll reevaluate. It's the way we spec our truck with the double rail frame. We get them oil sprayed every year, and we specify an extruded body. So there, it's giving us a greater return on investment and a longer service life expectancy for those vehicles.
Are you good, Councillor Yeo?
Yeah, that's it for now. Thank you.
Thank you. You know, great comment, if I can just add. I know, Councillor Elmsley, I've got you, don't worry. Great comment on the growth, because, you know, I think our growth projections from the, you know, our provincial growth, and we've had this conversation before, the projections the province is giving us, we're never meeting those projections, and yet we're forced to plan according to the provincial growth projections. And it's very frustrating, because you're right, we're not hitting those numbers as of yet. Maybe one day we will. But I think it goes to this conversation about, you know, what are some of the triggers we keep asking? And I asked the chief, what's a trigger when you say it's based on growth? We've got a 10-year master plan. There's a trigger in here based on growth that if we get to this point, you know, we're going to need more firefighters. Well, of course we are. That's a pretty common sense trigger, but what is that trigger? Like what kind of growth are we talking about? And I think all we can really do is base it on projections, because that's all we have right now. And it's going to be up to the council of the day when, you know, when the chief of the day, whoever that might be at that time, comes forward and says, I need more full-time firefighters in Lindsay because, you know, our growth numbers are this. It's going to be at that time up to the council of the day to decide, you know, does the growth that we've met or had in the last bunch of years trigger the need for more firefighters? And just because it's in our master plan doesn't mean it's a done deal. It just means we're planning according to those projected growth. And I just, because I struggle with that too. I go, well, what's the trigger? If you told me we need another, you know, 5,000 people in Lindsay before we need to hire whatever, a training officer, another training officer, then okay, I got something to base it on. But it's really just going to be up to the council of the day to, I think, justify the business plan when the chief of the day brings it forward and says, you know, here's my business plan on why I need this. You know, to Councillor Dunn's comment, you can say, well, why is this here? Well, it was in part of our master fire plan projection. Well, that's okay. It still doesn't mean it's approved. It just means it was part of the plan moving forward. And now it's here before council as part of that plan for council to make a decision on whether we should go ahead or they should go ahead, or whether it should get pushed off to the next master plan because we haven't met those growth projections, you know, at that time. So, you know, it's tough. And yet we keep hearing when we approve these master plans that we're buying into development charges, asset management plans. You know, we're including some of these things in our growth projections, and now we have to charge more for development charges because we need a new fire station in 10 years, but we have to plan. But we don't know if in 10 years the growth's going to be there to justify the cost of a new fire station. All we can do is project, and I really think that's, you know, that's what a master plan is. It's, you know, there's some things, I have some questions as well, but it's a trigger thing that's been kind of bugging me, and it kind of makes sense. So it's not a question. Councillor Elmsley, go ahead.
Yeah, if If I can add just for a second, Mr. Mayor, through you to council. So talk about full-time staffing for the Lindsay area. Like what would a trigger be? Well, already because we have full-time staffing in Lindsay, you know, the best practice and industry standard would be to have 5 full-time firefighters per shift. So when you have people off training or on one of their entitlements or whatever, the minimum shift is 4. So that provides the optimum level of first response and firefighter safety. So, you know, the trigger is we should have that now, but we know we can't afford it. We cannot add the burden, like that would almost be a 1% tax increase alone for the Area A, the Lindsay Ops, to fund for full-time firefighters. So we have to wait until the tax base increases enough in that Lindsay response area before we would even consider bringing that forward to council for approval. You know, if we saw that there's an opportunity for maybe 1 or 2 or phase them in over a period of time, other municipalities do that. But just getting back, the trigger for that is actually now, but we just can't afford it.
Thank you. Councillor Helmsley, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the chief. Councillor Dunn and Yo and yourself have managed to steal a lot of my thunder, but I do have a couple of other comments and questions. One of them has to do with the development of the plan in terms of we were told that there would be a task force and that we would be surveyed and we would be consulted on putting together the plan. And I'm not sure how many years ago it was, but I believe it was 6 or 7 years ago that we had a session in the Ops Community Center where councillors were invited to meet with the people who are putting the plan together. And we had a session one morning, and I think there was a survey at that time. And as far as I know, that was the last consultation with council on this master fire plan. I'm just wondering if I missed something there or if I missed meetings that were supposed to take place to have input to this.
Just through Mr. Mayor to council, I can't recall exactly the dates, but I know that part of the process was there was a steering committee put together. It was made up of volunteer representatives, union representatives, a CAO, mayor. Council was consulted. There was a survey, and I think out of many of the master fire plans this group has done over the last few years, we had one of the largest survey inputs from any municipalities around here. We got lots of great community feedback, and I think that was the extent of what the involvement from the stakeholders was. I know about a year ago or several months ago, the consultant came and did a preliminary high-level presentation to council, and then did one just a couple months ago, and this is the final kind of report back on the overall process.
Yeah, and you know, I think for myself anyway, I thought there would be more consultation with council prior to this coming forward. One of my other questions is, and it's very difficult. I tried to sit down and go through this fire master plan and add up how much all of the recommendations and all of the suggestions in the plan would cost. And you know, I included things when I went through and looked station by station, for example, where they talked about, well, this station is overcrowded and there's not enough space here, and it creates a tripping hazard and a danger for the employees there. I'm assuming that the next logical step is they need a new fire hall. And there were 5 or 6 I think, of our fire stations that fell into that category. So I kind of got waylaid in my finances in trying to figure out how much this would cost. And I just wondered if you had done any math along those lines and could tell us, if we took all these recommendations and if we took all the suggestions, what would the bottom line be in total cost?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to council, that's a great question. So there's a couple parts to that. So let me break it down. You know, some of the biggest ticket items in this, if we brought forward all these recommendations, then they would be approved, would be, so we don't have any new fire halls on the books other than a new headquarters. This was built in 1902. So it's, if my math is correct, it's like 118 years old. And it's a typical classic old downtown station. Something needs to happen. So we've got a few moving parts, but again, it's all growth related. We're hoping to be a consultant on the paramedic master plan to see if there's an opportunity to cohabitate in a joint operations building. We could move a couple kilometers from the downtown area and still be able to provide maximum coverage. If we did a standalone headquarters, we'd be looking at about $8 million. So that's growth related, development charge related. But again, it's all growth dependent, and there may be some opportunities, as I said, as a joint venture with our paramedic service. Any of our volunteer stations, there's nothing. I know Councillor Ashmore had asked when the Omimi station is scheduled to be rebuilt. I know that there's a potential subdivision or a development down the road in Omimi, and the developer had already promised to give some land. On the radar right now, there's no plans to change that station. When you look through the plan on all these kind of deficiencies within the station, we had a third-party Altus report completed as part of an overall program for the city a few years ago, and we looked at all the maintenance and repair requirements for each station, and we put together a 20-year plan. So each year in our budget, we asked for $100,000 for capital repairs and improvements to each of those facilities. So we've had great success over the last few years since that report was completed. So when you see that $100,000 budget line in your budget each year, that's what that represents, is keeping our fire stations in good repair and maintained. So each year we do a couple, 2 or 3 projects, and then whether it's doors, windows, some a little bit of modernization inside. That's where those dollars come from. Really, we have about a $50,000 asset base in buildings alone, so $100,000 isn't a lot of money. We could easily, quadruple that, and we would gladly take it. But that's what we have, and that's what we do each year. We plan with our station coordinators, and we schedule those works, and we rotate based on priority around the city and get those works done. The next big ticket item would be if we were to fulfill all the staffing requirements based on today's dollars. If they were all in place, it would probably be just shy of $1 million of wages, pension, benefits to employ 8 additional full-time staff. I think that's what the number worked out to be, the key positions that were identified in the plan. And then the rest of the stuff is just our regular programming that we budget for each year operationally and small capital projects.
Well, thank you for that. It doesn't give me a warm fuzzy feeling, unfortunately. And when I read about recommendations for a training center, and I believe also for a truck that is used for training, I wonder about the cost of those things. And I certainly look at the facilities we have now in Cameron and developing that more fully for training against what the costs are to send employees, firefighters off to Fire College in Sarnia, or I think there's another one. I'm not sure where it is. I'm not sure whether we're better off having our own training facility or we're better off utilizing the fire colleges.
Yes, if I can, I'll just provide a brief comment on that through you, Mr. Mayor, to council. So the truck, you're talking kind of a mobile, and I don't want you to think it's a truck and it's going to drive around. So what it is, it's the trainings, the live fire training prop that we want to do. Like the classroom is great. We're going to expand that over time in partnership with all city divisions. But down on the fire ground, you've seen, I think you might have seen where we do all our pumper training, pump ops training and hydrant training and stuff. So down in that vicinity at some point in time, we want to have a simulator that we can do live fire training. It's a modular component. They're made basically out of sea containers or sea cans, and they're configured in a way, they're all certified. So you can do basically residential fire attack. We priced it out. I think it's called the Dragger unit. That's the trade name. And I think it's around $300,000. So we're hoping for about $400,000, we can have a fixed, really cost efficient live fire training model that's there that we can schedule our firefighters through. They can rotate, they can take their trucks out of station at night and go up and do different scenarios, weather permitting, several months through the year. So that way they're not, they don't have to take a week off work. They don't have to travel. We'll be able to do more work towards certification and put that live fire training component all together with their book work in-house on site here. And rather than training our firefighters, on the fire ground during an actual live, real fire scenario. So that's the longer term plan. I think if you recall, each year we move forward. Well, maybe you don't see it because it usually gets removed from the budget during the negotiation process at the senior management team level. We've been trying to put away $100,000 a year for a multi-year project. And unfortunately, I think we had 150. We're getting close. We were almost at the halfway point to being able to move forward with that. But that was one of the concessions we had to make this year, and we deferred it to 2022. So hopefully in a couple of years, we'll be back on track and we'll have that modular live fire training component or prop at 710 Cameron.
Thank you.
Well, I'll just, a couple of comments, Mr. Mayor, if I could. I think that, to Councillor Dunn's point, I have been on the receiving end of the comments that why are we doing this? Well, you approved it in the fire master plan. So that kind of sticks in my craw a little bit, and I worry about that as well. But what I would like to see in the fire master plan is when we do recommendations and we make recommendations for a new fire hall for Lindsay, or a dragger unit, or an aerial truck, or whatever it is, that it gets costed out in the funds of the year that the plan is coming forward. So we know what we're talking about when we go forward with the master plan, so that if it's 6-7 years later, in the master plan, and there's a different council there, they can look at the fire master plan and say, well, in 2020, that was going to cost $700,000, and now you're asking for $2 million or whatever it is, so that there's some order of magnitude that can be looked at. And I will make a comment, and I'm not trying to be mean-spirited here. The fellow who drafted this plan may be very knowledgeable and may know everything about fire, and I don't pretend to know anything. But don't ever let him get a microphone in his hand again and speak to council, because that had to be one of the worst presentations I've ever heard in my life. And I'm sorry to say it, but really and truly, I came away with the idea that, why did we hire this guy? If he does presentations like this, what is his work like on a document? So, you know, if I was going to do it, Chief, my recommendation would be that we ask you and your staff to go back and go through the document and punch it up a little, especially on putting numbers, hard dollar numbers against some of these recommendations, and also what we're going to do about these fire halls where these deficiencies, and I know you said it's $100,000 a year and you work on them a bit at a time, but when I read something that there's not enough space, that it's a tripping hazard and a safety concern, I don't know how you fix that within the fire halls we have. And so I'd like to see some rationale about that. But I thank you for bringing the document forward and for the discussion we've had today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ashmore, go ahead.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the chief. Just a couple of quick things. We're talking about in the photos, they're quite evident that space is tight. The trucks are big and they're getting bigger. Now, we're talking more of centralization. That's sort of the theme that I'm sort of reading into this, centralization of putting a proposed new fire station in Lindsay, even though we have one in Ops as well. But my question is, in the southeast, Omimi, for example, I'm just wondering why even on the next 10 years there was no mention of a new station there, a new hall, because it is, and I think you could probably verify, like it is at the stage where it's probably the most challenging, how do I say that? I'll say challenging building that we have in size and space and condition. And the second part of the question is the firefighters. Like in Omimi, we had full-time firefighters and it's a bit of a sore spot, but is there no way that, okay, we've saved money. So we've saved money going to part-time firefighters. Is there any way that we can go back and put a couple of, or one or two full-time firefighters in Omimi or Bobcaygeon like they had before? I mean, this is what I'm getting leery of when I see this centralization thing into one big central hall. Thanks.
Chief, I'll ask you to comment. I'm not sure where the centralization or one big hall for all our firefighters coming from, but if you want to comment, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to council. You know, I think Omimi ranks 7th overall with condition of our fire stations. Sorry, you know, it may look a little bit old and dated, but it's in good repair. You know, there's only the 2 trucks in that station. There's lots of room for training. It's a shared facility with the OPP, and it's got a lot of good years ahead. It's not on the radar for replacement. We'll do the repairs that are required on a yearly basis. You know, we redeployed the full-time firefighters out of Omimi and Bobcaygeon. That was done based on risk. There was no, you know, back in the day, you know, it was prior to amalgamation, the decision was made by whomever to have daytime staffing to offset some of the costs. And there was some other challenges in the Bobcaygeon area that warranted some full-time staff. That doesn't meet any kind of business model today as far as wages, pension, and benefits go for the amount of calls that they would run. The risk is in the larger urban area. There needed to be more firefighters in here. The decision was made by council to move them, and the volunteers have reassumed that responsibility through the day from Monday to Friday, and there hasn't been any issues at all. So you know, it still makes no business sense at this time to even re-look at putting full-time firefighters back in those areas. As far as centralization, no, Lindsay's the urban hub, and requirements of population density and building construction require full-time fire services. And it has had full-time fire services for, you know, probably over 100 years now. And at some point in time, those numbers need to increase at the appropriate time when it's affordable. Lindsay's just not going to take over. They have their response area for the Lindsay Ops area, and there may be some efficiencies if they move out into some other areas, but that would have to be all modeled or mapped out. But it wouldn't be the full-time firefighters in the Lindsay Ops area responding all over the city unless they need an aerial or some other specialized service. And I don't really have anything else to say about that.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Seymour Fagan?
Thank you for that. Chief, you were talking, Chief, you were talking about regulations. I emailed you earlier looking to see how many volunteer and how many actual employees do we have with the fire department as firefighters.
Yes. Through you, Mr. Mayor and Council, I can answer that question right now. We have approximately 400 volunteers. We run between 350 and 400 volunteers on a regular basis. And then we have approximately 30 full-time firefighters, fire prevention staff, and administration staff. So 30 full-time employees and between 350 and 400 volunteer firefighters.
And does that meet all the regulations?
It's basically staffing is up to the municipality to determine based on its needs and circumstances. So basically,
okay, thank you.
Yeah, the long and short of that is it's for the fire administration to bring forward based on risk, based on occurrences, based on history, recommendations for level of service to council. Council overall approves that level of service through the establishing and regulating bylaw. This model of service has been approved and been in place within the city of Kawartha Lakes for decades now.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Any further questions on the master fire plan? Councillor Vail?
Thanks. Through you. I missed, what was the total number of volunteer firefighters currently?
We have between 350 and 400.
Okay. So when I read through this plan and everything, so what is the plan or direction when it comes to the volunteers? When I look at section 4, there's an awful lot of talk and commentary about moving more in a direction of full-time firefighters and volunteer.
I don't, thank you through you, Mr. Mayor to Council. I don't want to fumble through the master fire plan. I have it here right now. I can take a look at that and report back, but no, we're always going to be a large composite department. I don't see, in my tenure here or probably even my lifetime as a resident, full-time fire service expanding out into any other area. There may be a requirement, depending on the growth in Lindsay, to have a second station, but that best location model for a full-time station in the Lindsay Ops area, there's a couple of different things that could happen. It could have a main station and then a substation, or it could have one main centralized station. And then even have enough room to accommodate a second tanker. And I know this has come up in the past about the op station, why we need it. If we had a place to put that tanker right now, we probably would be able to phase out that op station, but we can't at this time. So there's a few different moving parts with that, and we haven't really put a lot of attention to detail. All we know is that we do need a new headquarters at some point in time. And what the actual best model for that is still yet to be determined. But to come back to your question, to move towards more of a increase the overall full-time numbers within the city, that's not on the radar. So I'll have to take a look in section 4 and see what it is. Or if you can shoot me an email in the particular section, if I can provide some more clarification on that, I'd be happy to do so.
Sure. So just further to that, so 350 to 400. And is that sufficient, or, are we under what we should be?
Well, we always try and keep a roster of 20 at each station. Again, that's a moving target. Once we get down to about 15, then we start to do a hiring campaign for those areas. We're starting a process for a spring hiring. Even though COVID is upon us, we're still going to do Zoom interviews and stuff. So we strive to not drop below 15, but unfortunately those things do happen from time to time. Our priority would be to get those areas back up to adequate staffing, and that's one of the reasons why we have this 3-station response. We know for a structure fire, we know we need at least 20 firefighters, and 3-station response generally provides that. And if we need more help, we'll call another station. So we're always, when we really need our staff, they always come through for us to protect the community.
Thank you. Any further questions regarding the fire plan? Okay, we have a recommendation. Again, it's that these be considered as part of future strategic planning as part of the fire plan. What is council's wish? Councillor Dunn, go ahead. We can't hear you. You're on mute, sir.
Sorry, as printed.
As printed, thank you. Second? Councillor O'Reilly, thank you. Do you want to speak to it, Councillor Dunn?
No, I'm fine, thanks.
Councillor O'Reilly, Deputy Mayor O'Reilly. Any further questions, comments? Councillor Ashmore?
Yeah, I was just wondering, Mr. Mayor, if there's any way that the Omimi station could be included in the 10 to 15 year time period, just as a mention, nothing committed, just written in the plan, the master fire plan.
This is a master fire plan for the next 5 to 10 years, so it would probably, if you're looking at that, then my recommendation would be to try and get it included in the plan beyond that. So I don't know what else to tell you. The chief has a comment. I'm not gonna ask him to include something that in their opinion doesn't need included right now, but down the road, I'm sure a lot of these stations are gonna need to be part of future master plans moving forward. So I can't add it to this one, I'm sorry. Any further questions or comments? Okay, I'm gonna call the question. The motion is as printed, that the master fire plan be received, that the recommendations contained within the master fire plan attached to report Fire 2021-001 as Appendix A be considered as part of the future strategic planning and department work plan objectives, and that this recommendation be brought forward to council for consideration at the next regular council meeting. Call the question. All in favor? Thank you. All opposed? Motion fails. So what does council want to do? Motion to receive? Councillor Helmsley, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to receive the report and have it go back to fire services to have some costing put in and to have more information given on the upgrades to the fire halls.
How about costing and timelines? Costing and projected timelines and strategy for the fire halls. You okay with that?
Yes, fine.
Somebody want to second that? Councillor Yeo, thank you. I think it speaks for itself. If you want to comment, Councillor Yeo, go ahead.
Yeah, if we're sending it back, and I have no problem sending it back, perhaps it could be something in the well-being of our volunteer firefighting force and our full-time guys, for that matter. Personally, I've never seen the morale in the fire department lower, north of Rosedale, I guess I'll call it. And there's, as far as I can see, there's nothing for these guys to fall back on as far as supports and stuff, where a normal full-time city employee, I think, would have some supports and stuff to. So, and if they don't, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe our whole city needs it. I don't know, but I think I'd like to see something in a master plan as far as the health and well-being of our department on a personal level. Don't know how that works, but
So
maybe some thought into it. Thank you.
what's your ask? That that be considered as it's sent back to staff along with the costing and the timelines and such?
Yeah, some suggestions on how we maintain the health and well-being of our department.
Strategies for health and well-being of our firefighters. Okay, you okay with that, Councillor Helmsley?
Yeah.
Okay, and you
I'm
seconded
fine.
it, so I assume you're okay with it. Question, Councillor Dunn, go ahead.
Yeah, I struggle with the costing idea. That's like guessing how much it's going to cost to build a house 5 years from now. At the very best, it's going to be a guess, and as a result, I don't see a value in it. You know, what's a fire truck going to cost 10 years from now when we need a new aerial? I just don't know how you figure some of that stuff out, because it's a plan. It's not what we're going to do next year. Where you've got something to work on. It's a plan that's the costs are they're going to be different regardless of what we guess. You know, I mean, we struggle with building roads today. Like, you know, we do a best guess of what it's going to cost, and then they end up coming back and they're saying we underbid or we under finance stuff. To do it for a fire hall 4 or 5 or 6 years down the road, I just struggle with that concept.
Well, I would like to see the cost in 2020 dollars, so that when they're dealing with it in 2026 or 2027, they can see what the costs were in 2020 and judge accordingly.
I can do that. I have no problem with that concept, but then we don't need timelines.
Well, the timeline idea was really just that, you know, you're talking about growth projections. So based on the growth projections, when you're talking about a pumper truck or a ladder truck, or you're talking about a new fire hall, what are you projecting for it to say it's growth triggered? But right now, what is your projection? You know, my projection might be, according to the current projections, we're looking at that 8 years down the road, and the estimated cost in 2020 dollars would be X. And I think it's just, you know, we know it's a projection. You're absolutely right. It's going to change. Most of these things will be recosted, obviously, when they come forward for budget consideration with up-to-date dollars. But I guess it gives some more information in the background. Chief, you want to comment on that? Go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to council. I don't know if you recall or not, but our original master fire plan from 2009, the first 4 fire, I'm just going to use this as an example. The ops station, Pontypool, Bethany, and Little Britain were to be replaced. And there was time frames and costs associated with that. You know, we won't be moving into the Little Britain station sometime in 2021. So it's 12 years after. So the time frame and costs are totally, you know, it was all based on growth. So, you know, we can put those budget estimates and timeframes in place, but I really don't know how realistic they are going to be. That's all.
No, fair enough. I think we get that. Any further questions? We got a motion on the floor. Okay, everybody clear on the motion? Okay, I'll take that as a yes. I'll call the question. All in favor? Thank you. Anyone opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Thanks, Chief. Appreciate the update. And that's it for our agenda. So I just need a motion to adjourn. Councillor Yeo and Dunn. All in favor? That motion is passed. Thank you. Have a good evening and stay safe. Take care, everybody.
Andy, you going to be in your office for a minute?
Yep. Yes.
Can I call you?